Hi, welcome back guys. This is your sensei, back with another fanfiction. This is the first part of What If Naruto Sacrificed and Got Harem. Now before starting, please give this video a like and subscribe to the channel if you want more videos like this. Now let's get into the fanfic. Someone had stolen her seat. Nobody stole Yang Long's seat. There were lines you just didn't cross. And this was one of them. Even from this distance she could see the cheeky BSDRD's back, clad in threadbare black and orange rags that stuck out even in the flashing lights of Junior's club. Ugh, no fashion sense at all this one. What she couldn't see was his face. From this angle she saw what might only the rear of his head, framed by dirty blonde hair. Really dirty. Like he'd fallen into a mud puddle and summarily been run over by a pack of angry Beowulf kind of dirty. She couldn't think of any other way to describe him. As far as first impressions went, it certainly wasn't the best one. She hadn't even truly met the lout yet and she already wanted to knock him out. A muscle jumped in her jaw. She forced it to subside. No, bad Yang. She hissed at herself. Don't smash. Smashing is bad. She just wanted to talk with him. Loudly. Repeatedly. With her firsts. All around her the club heaved with people enjoying their weekend, but really now, what kind of name was the club? Honestly, Junior really didn't have any imagination. Forcing the exasperated blonde to thread her way haphazardly through the swaying masses as she made her way toward the bar proper. Heavy bass music throbbed in her ears, deafening her to all else as she stormed forward. Pulsating lights had her squinting through a dry haze while she waited. Someone bumped into her in the crowd, nearly knocking her down. Watch it, Blondie. Lilac eyes snapped to them, and they subsided with a whimper. Under any other circumstances Yang might have pitied the poor BSDRD sitting in her seat. That or tried to stand downwind of him. No, not so much, if he didn't move by the time she reached him. Well, she was a lady after all. She'd give him one chance to haul his sorry keister out of her seat. After that she made no promises. Amber Celica twitched on her wrists as she crept closer, armed and ready. She'd come here looking for information on Raven. But it seemed someone had beaten her to the punch. Said someone was in her seat, chatting up Junior, and more importantly wasting her time. Could this night get any worse? Spoilers. It absolutely did. As she looked on, the man in question slid a strawberry sunrise across the counter to him. Hey, first her seat, then her info broker, now her strawberry sunrise. This meant war. Lilac eyes blazed as she bowled her way forward. 0, 0, 0. Junior considered himself a good judge of character. Some might call it foresight, magic, perhaps even a semblance, when in truth, it was neither of those. Was merely a unique skill of his, one Hai had acquired over a storied career in the underworld. You didn't get to be where Haixin, leader of the Red Axe gang, without being able to read people, much less situations. He prided himself at being able to read an individual merely at a glance. For the most part, he could tell the innocent from the guilty, dangerous from harmless, and so on. Couldn't run a club, much less a gang, without that kind of know-how. Information was his forte, and he knew it well. Why, one might even call it a career of his. He knew nearly everything that went on in Vale. For a small fee, he supplied said information to those who wanted to learn. So, yes, Haixin was adept at reading people. But this, here, right now, this had bad news written all over it. His sixth sense was shrieking bloody murder at him, telling him to give this latest client whatever the hell he wanted, grab the twins, pack up shop, and run for the hills. There was just one problem. The info he was looking for. Hai didn't have it. Friggin' lunatic. He didn't seem to get that, however. He'd stumbled into his club hours ago and been rambling ever since. Honestly, he'd given him a strawberry sunrise on the house just to shut him up for a few seconds. It hadn't worked, of course. Nothing ever did. For the last time, what the hell are you talking about? He set down the glass he'd been cleaning to scowl at the battered young man leaning against the bar before him. Shinobi, elemental nations. You're barking up the wrong tree here, pal. I've never heard of those things. So, what do you know? Whiskered cheeks dimpled in a smile as he set the glass down, having drained it in a single gulp. I need information. It's really important. Not for the first time, Hai considered telling him to sod off. Also not for the first time, something in his gaze stopped him cold. This man had a well-traveled look to him, almost alarmingly so. If he didn't know better, he'd accuse him of being a huntsman. Impossible, of course. Not even huntsman students were this naive. They certainly weren't this chatty on a bloody Saturday. He didn't have time for this. The club was practically swaying with people tonight like a thing alive, and he was losing his patience. Right then, time for a different avenue of attack. This from the guy who lose like he got into a fight with Beowulf and lost. Blue eyes blinked back at him. What's that? Junior nearly dropped his glass. Do you not know what a Grimm is? All right, the kid was having him on. Had to be. You want to run that by me again? I'm not kidding. The stranger plunked himself back down on an empty bar stool. The hell's a Grimm? Junior stole another glance at the stranger's attire. His clothes were tattered and his headband battered, its metal worn to near smoothness by the passing of time. His jacket hadn't fared much better, little more than orange-black rags now with barely a stitch of cloth between and no weapons to be seen. Any observer would have thought him foolish at best, suicidal at worst. Why else was someone walking around in bloody rags like those? Surely only a fool would willingly wear such a thing. A fool indeed. Or a madman. Perhaps he was both. Blast it, the kid was talking again. Look, buddy, I've been asleep for, well, a while, and I kinda woke up here. Still, that smile never wavered from those whiskered cheeks. Well, not here, but you know what I mean. He wrinkled his nose and CLC his tongue as though he'd tasted something incredibly foul. Woke up underground. Had to tear my way out of the street and everything. He sat up a little straighter and something flashed in those bright blue eyes of his. 10,000 years can given you such a crick in the neck, man. His neck twisted within sharp pop that had high wincing. I really just want to get out of here. High threw his arms up. Then why are you still sitting there? I'm here because someone told me to come here. His smile brightened even more. He said you know everything. Well, tell me how to get back to the Leaf Village and I'll be on my way. And who, pray tell, he all but snarled, is this someone? He got a name. Some guy named Roman. The blonde threw out a shrug, heedless of the aggravated noise High made. He told me to come here. Real nice fella. Hope nothing bad happens to him. Junior pinched the brow of his nose and ruthlessly bit down on the urge to scream for what felt like the umpteenth time. There was again another migraine calling his name. Torchwick, of course. Chucky Biestiardi. This had his fingerprints all over it. Right, that settled it. He was a dead man walking. Hey, another blonde not at all like the first. Butted in between them, lilac eyes sharp and angry. Just how long are you two gonna talk? I've been here all night. Not another one. I'm sorry. Much to Junior's surprise, the whiskered one actually capitulated. You look angry. Am I in your seat? The buxom blonde planted a fist on her hip and tapped her right foot. You are, actually. Oh, he offered a rueful chuckle. Here, I'll move. Lilac eyes widened. Just like that. Yup. Quick as you please, he hopped out of his seat and made way for her. Blondie didn't bother him. She simply sashayed past to reclaim what was rightfully hers. Junior's gaze shifted. The kid was scrawny. He didn't look like he could flatten the club with her bare hands. The broad did. She had that air about her. A huntress, or one in training at least. TCH, blasted blondes. That settled it. In lieu of their names, which he still didn't know. He was calling them Blonde and Blondie. At least Blondie had a nice rack. Hey, eyes up here. And he'd been caught starting. CRP. Listen, High coughed into a fist and quickly averted his gaze. Info ain't free, kid. You'll have to pay up. 2,500 lien, and I'll see what I can do. Take it or leave it. Blondie whistled, lilac eyes wide. Ain't that kinda expensive? He's been here most of the night. Junior crossed both arms before his broad chest. At this point, I'm charging extra for my pain and suffering. Frankly, he didn't know what the hell a Leaf Village was, but at this point he was willing to take the kid's lien just to be rid of him. Well, that's the thing. The whiskered blonde looked aside and scratched a tan cheek. I don't have any money. Junior growled at that and he looked back, decidedly sheepish. Didn't have any when I sealed the 10 tails into myself 100,000 years ago, and unless civilization started to operate on favors while I was away, it doesn't. The blonde girl put in helpfully. Then I've got nothing. He shrugged weakly. Sorry, I was kinda hoping you'd do me a solid. Junior's right eye began to twitch. The left soon joined it. His entire face began to darken, turning an ominous shade of red. Slowly at first, hardly noticeable, really. No one heard him grind his teeth over the music. Right, that tore it. Blonde and now Blondie over there had worn down his last nerve. He was in no mood for a wild goose chase. Never mind whatever this was. His clenched fist slammed down on the bar, fracturing the glass. What do you think we are, a charity? Both blondes blinked at him. Yes, that's it. You. He stabbed a finger at the whiskered blonde, all but jabbing him in the nose. Out. Hey, you can't just toss him out. One more word and you're out of here, too. Me. Blondie squawked back at him. I just got here. Don't care. Milsha. Melanie. He snapped his fingers, summoning his strongest fighters. Take our guest outside. He's overstayed his welcome. Like clockwork, the twins materialized on either side of the blonde, striking silhouettes in red and white. As one, they moved to hem him in, denying him any chance of escape. Blonde only sighed. Usually this was the part where perps showed fear. Milt and Mel weren't huntresses by any stretch of the imagination, but they were still a DMN sight better than most of the goons in his gang. And yet the stranger barely batted an eyelash. This really isn't necessary. He frowned at them. I haven't done anything wrong. Come on, Whiskers. Melanie latched onto his left arm, eyes in with mirth. Time to go. You heard her. Militia claimed his right, claws scraping across his arm. We can do this easy way or the strong way. Your choice. He frowned, looking very much like a kicked puppy. But where am I supposed to go? Dunno, don't care. Junior scoffed. Anywhere but here. It was the wrong thing to say, because the young man twisted out of the twins' grasp and rounded on him. Look, you really don't want to do this. There it was, that FLC cur in his eyes again to set High on edge. I'm tired, I'm hungry, I've had a hell of a day. And you're making me angry. His back straightened a touch and he suddenly realized how tall the kid was. You wouldn't like me when I'm angry. Just tell me how to get home and I'll be on my way. Do that, and I'll never darken your door again. He made strange gesture with his right hand. I swear. Scout's honor. I don't think so, blonde boy. Girls. The twins approached. Fine. The whiskered youth rolled his shoulders in a shrug as they moved to flank him again. Have it your own way. His smile returned, just the wrong shade of annoyed. And my name ain't Blonde. From the shadows of a tattered sleeve right hand rose, and idly high noticed it ended in a ragged stump just below the elbow. My name is Naruto. Hooded eyes rose to regard him. And you brought this on yourself. Remember that. All around them, the air boiled. Tirama, cloak, something answered. Copy. Contrary to his words, Naruto didn't don a cloak. Not at all. It was more akin to say he simply burned. One moment he looked like some crazy murder hobo straight off the streets, in the next he became a gilded glowing avatar of death. Before their very eyes his body blazed an almighty shade of burning amber, rimmed with black markings about his head and shoulders. A strange rippling heat rose off his body, shimmering across a smile that seemed wider than ever before. A golden arm sprouted from his ruined stump to complete the ensemble, clawed fingers flexing lazily. All right. When next he spoke, his voice thrummed with that of another. We can do this the easy way or the strong way. Melanie surged forward with a snarl. Don't you mock us. That unholy golden arm reared around and caught Melanie's leg as her bladed heel swept toward his skull. Long lashes fluttered in a rapid blink as she balked at him. Unable to balance herself, she threw a wild punch his way. It wasn't blocked by aura, instead the blonde took it dead on his headband. She balked. No aura. But that's impossible. Oh. Hey. He reeled her in by the ankle and his forehead pressed against hers, his face now frightfully close. That wasn't very nice. Her mind short-circuited and her tongue betrayed her in spectacular fashion. You have nice eyes. Thanks. He beamed. Now clench your teeth. This is gonna hurt. Why you may. A vicious twist of the wrist appended Melanie and sent the slight girl crashing into them through a pillar with a strangled yelp. Shards of broken glass flew everywhere, sending guests scurrying for cover. Simultaneously, his human hand snared Milsha's claws before she could avenge her sister and run him through. Red eyes met green and the duo descended into a whirl of motion that lasted all of 3 seconds, one that ended when Milsha crashed backward over the counter and slammed into bar. Bottles shattered. Alcohol stained the floor. Junior swore and reached below the bar for his weapon. Diamond kid. You'll regret that. Burning eyes seared into his, burning with the intensity of 1,000 suns. A finger stabbed out at him. Stay. Killing intent struck Junior like a physical force. Every muscle in his body locked up as one, each and every cell united in singular fear. For a moment he saw something, beheld a terrible glowing vulpine skull looming over the boy's shoulders. He stared into the abyss and abyss stared back, grinning at him with terrible teeth. And 9 tails. No, 10. He couldn't look away. It ate him by the soul now and every second ground his mind down that much further. Monster. He was a monster. What the hell had been unleashed in Vale? Naruto saw his expression and took pity on him. A golden finger stabbed down and broke the spell. Sit. Junior sat. He slumped to the floor wide-eyed and terrified. Indeed, he was still sitting when someone walked up behind Naruto, grabbed him by his shoulder, and spun him around. Hey, young Zao Long growled at him, her smile decidedly strained. There was glass in her golden mane. Thanks for the show. You ruined my hair, though. As if to punctuate that very statement, a few stray strands of gold fell to the floor. Gotta kill you now. The smile became a scowl. Nothing personal. Clenched knuckles barreled into Naruto's face at breakneck speed. He caught them in an open palm. Not so the shockwave that followed. Lights burst and glass absolutely flew in every direction, flattening those foolish few who hadn't fled, henchmen and clubgoer alike. High above, the music cut off with an ugly squawk as the DJ toppled down from his booth. Not one to be deterred, Young planted her feet and threw a second punch, only to find her haymaker intercepted by another. Hey, that's much better. Blonde grinned back at Blondie, red eyes meeting red. You fight pretty good. I actually felt that. You won't be feeling anything when I'm done with you. Young pushed back against him, gone livid. Hold still. Blondie and Blondie collided like a freight train as Junior sat there, stunned, reeling from it all. This just wasn't his night. No, this was insane. What had he done to deserve this? He whimpered a little as the two began to sack what little was left of his club. Surely one of them had to grow tired sooner or later. Right. All right. This couldn't possibly end well. 0, 0, 0. She'd never felt so alive. Young felt a laugh tear out of her. At some point their little spat had turned into an outright punch-out. They traded hits like champions, roundhouses and haymakers, wild swing left and right with reckless abandon. She boxed, and her fellow blonde boxed right back, giving as good as he got. Every strike was meant to break bones and shatter sinew, mangle muscle and crush cartilage. No mercy was given, and none expected. Her head snapped back as his fist crashed through her aura to strike her dead in the face. She'd have a black eye tomorrow. Ruby would ask questions. Worth it. Truly, she couldn't remember the last time she'd fought someone who could match her, exceed her even. She loved it, adored it, every bloody bit of it. How much time had passed? Minutes, hours. She'd lost track of the time well and truly, and she did not care. Come on, Whiskers. That all you got? She whirled, Ember Celica barked, and the blonde grunted as her fist thundered into his cheek. He pushed past it and kicked out, sending her sprawling. She shoved herself back up and bounded and once more with a roar, one her fellow blonde mirrored. The night was long, and she was nowhere near finished with him. He certainly wasn't with her. It was the beginning of a appealing friendship. Young could fight. A short, sharp burst of laughter sprang from Naruto's lips as she crashed into him. Rather than flee like any sane individual would, he took her tackle head on and allowed her to ram him into a wall. Breath burst from his lungs, but his smile never faded, even as her golden gauntlets barked against his golden body, ramming a raw round of dust against his ribs. The impact barely even tickled, although it did draw a smile to his whiskered cheeks. He raised both hands over his head and clasped his fingers together. The interlocked digits swung up and slammed down into her back like a piston. Young flinched. Still grinning, he repeated the motion. Once, twice, thrice. On the fourth strike she finally released him with a gasp. Though, she recoiled, hissing as she clutched at her shoulders. That's it hurt. Not as much as this will. She rounded just in time to meet his clenched knuckles. The blow caught her just under her stomach and bore her down into the ground, cratering the club floor beneath. An angry snarl greeted him, but he didn't give her time to rise. A second swing sent them hurtling down into the depths of the building, then into the cellar proper. Poor Junior. His wine would never be the same. Even as they fell they fought, trading blows like a pair of golden demons. For all her fiery fury, young Xiaolong moved with speed and ability well beyond her years. She fought harder than both the Malachite twins combined, and bleary as he was from centuries of sleep, she actually managed to press him. A little. It still didn't save her. The very moment they hit the ground she dove at him again, to which he caught her by the ankle and whipped her through a towering cask of ale. Sure enough, the wooden barrel ruptured as she crashed through, then came out sputtering on the other side, soaked in alcohol. That wild golden mane hung over her face for a moment before she reached down and pulled it aside. Her smile never faltered, even for a moment. Despite her soaked hair and ruined clothes, she looked more alive than he'd ever seen anyone. She swayed but a little, raised her fists, and bounced on her heels. It did fascinating things to her chest. What, is that it? She grinned at him. That all you got, Whiskers? Kurama whistled in his head. I think I'm in love. Feelings mutual. With a roar born of equal parts fury and glee, Young slammed her gauntlets behind her back. At first, Naruto couldn't quite comprehend what she was doing. Why throw her weapons back like that? Had she given up? But no, they barked dust and threw her forward like a golden meteor. He moved to evade, but his foot slipped on the SLCK floor, throwing him off. Yang showed no mercy. Her fist caught his cheek and launched him through a second tank, then a third, followed by a third, and finally a fourth. Drenched in Junior's whiskey and ale alike, he thrashed to his feet, coughing and sputtering. Okay, he groaned. I deserve that. Think I swallowed a little. Why was the room spinning? All right, maybe he'd gulped down more than a bit. The room kept swaying, even when he stood still. Was this what it felt like to be tipsy? Weird. He'd never experienced it before. His high metabolism never allowed it. The one time he tried, he burned right through the stuff. But quantity had a quality all its own. Still, it wasn't an unpleasant feeling, just strange. Speak for yourself. Yang rocked forward and he blurred to meet her. Their fists collided anew, rattling the ceiling above. Both blondes looked up. Yang found her wits first and pushed forward to grapple with him. Naruto met her in kind. Fists threaded into fingers as they caught one another in turn. Their foreheads slammed together. Boots bit into the floor, digging deep trenches against the stone as they strove against one another. Lidded lilac eyes met blazing blue. Where have you been all my life? Sleeping under a rock. His head reared back and struck hers. She mirrored the motion and did the same to him. Chakra roared. Aura snarled. Naruto reeled back with a laugh. He wasn't fully awake, not entirely recovered from centuries of sleeping. And this simply wasn't his era. He realized that now, and the notion brought him no small amount of sorrow. For better or worse, his world had changed while he slumbered. Under normal circumstances he would be angry about that, waking to find everything and everyone he'd ever loved was gone. Strange as it might sound, Young was helping. She wasn't trying to kill him, nor he her. If anything, they were stalling, drawing out the fight to see who could last longer. Brawling like this was more cathartic than anything else. It helped to bleed off all the stress, anger, and misery he'd been feeling since he woke up. Better yet, it was healthy. Well, healthier than crawling into the bottom of a bottle at any rate. Ruh! Young reared back and bit his neck, teeth sinking into the tender flesh just above his shoulder. Naruto yelped in a rare moment of surprise and kicked back, driving a knee into her gut. She made him pay for it. His head snapped to the side as she got another good hit in. At his peak, he could have dodged that. But he didn't. Instead, he let the pain roll over him, center him. His knee slammed up and she met it with one of her own, wincing but a little. He felt a flash of guilt, one that vanished as don't stop. That's right. This is real. His forehead struck hers and sent her tumbling. I'm alive again. I'll be back to full strength in no time. Ember Celica barked and he dipped out of its path, evading her weapon with ease. Focus on the fight, not the past. Let it all out. Now let's kick things up a notch. Let it all out. They met in a whirlwind of fists, a drunken dance that had neither rhyme nor reason, a wild waltz that only left destruction in its wake. A brawl like this helped more than she could possibly imagine. Cleared the air, you know. He slapped a burning fist aside, then countered with one of his own. Yang's feet lifted from the floor before she hit back twice as strong. What kind of ability was that? He actually felt pain. Was this why Lee and Guy were always so gung-ho when it came to taijutsu? It felt good, really good. Maybe it was the alcohol talking, but he wanted more. No, he needed more. She just hit you. What are you going to do about it? His grin was just the wrong shade of vicious. Hit her harder. He swung his arms up and smashed Young through the ceiling. Powerful legs tensed and he leaped up after the flailing blonde with a roar. Distantly, he felt he was forgetting something. Or rather, someone, wasn't he? Meh, probably nothing too important in any case. He'd remember if it was. The brawl awaited. Junior was out of his league. One didn't run a criminal empire on pride alone. You had to be smart. You had to know when to hold them and when to fold them. He was no huntsman. He knew that. Still, he knew he wasn't a slouch. He could hold his own in a fair fight, at least for a little while. Thrown down with the best of them, even. Granted, it did mean he would win, but he'd put up at least a little fight. But this was madness. He'd been beaten in an instant, laid low by a look with the twins besides. And there wasn't a DMN thing he could do about it. A deafening crash shook the club once more, drawing a wince from the battered man. Stop blowing holes in my club. If either blonde heard him, they did precious little to show it. Probably couldn't even hear him down there, the cheeky little sits. Every attack shook the building from top to bottom, a near-constant quake that threatened to bring the very building down on their heads. They'd crashed down into the cellars and not come out since no wait. He told a lie. There they were. With neither word nor warning, Blondie yawned, sailed upright through a gaping hole in the floor, body bent double, long hair thrashing in the wind. She was still airborne when her fellow blonde caught her with a roundhouse kick, one that launched her out of the club entirely. Neither returned. A distant explosion confirmed his greatest hope. They'd taken their fight elsewhere. Junior looked left. Junior looked right. Junior folded like a wet noodle. Melanie's head poked up over the bar. Is it finally over? Milsha joined her a heartbeat later. Are they gone? Yeah, he all but croaked out the word. I think they left. One last blast barely rocked the floor, rattled the broken glass there. He dared to hope. Wherever those two had gone, they were far, far from here. Thank the brothers for small miracles. Bloody powerhouse. He'd tossed his girls around like nothing and fended off that other one with ease. Fast, too. Really fast. He'd never seen someone move like that. Not even her. Unbidden, a thought occurred to him. Haiching sat up just a little straighter against the ruined bar. If they had a powerhouse like that on their side, well, things might turn around for the Xing clan. Maybe they could even use him to get out from under the thumb of that wretched fire witch. Roman might actually thank him for that, once he finished wringing the thief's neck. And yet, the more he thought of it, the more his mind began to warm to the idea. How to go about it. They couldn't beat him a fight, fair or otherwise. He'd proven that much already. Moreover, they had nothing he wanted. Not information, not leverage, nothing at all. Or did they? Junior's gaze strayed to the twins. They'd put up a decent fight. Whiskers had even shown interest in them. It was a long shot among long shots, a risky gamble that might well blow up in his face. But what did he have to lose? Nothing at all. And yet, if his gambit succeeded, if by some miracle this 1 in a million wager paid off, Junior came to a conclusion. Has stuck that BSTRD if it's the last thing you do. Milsha and Melanie exchanged a wry look. That's not very likely. 0, 0, 0. Without word of warning, their brawl came to an end. It wasn't planned on either of their parts. Naruto and Young had long since left the club behind to engage in something of a running battle through the city streets. Each gave as good as they got, but it had to come to an end sooner or later. A mistimed block on Young's part left her wide open and Naruto capitalized on it. Burning knuckles seared past his face as he stepped in. His arms snapped back, and he had a brief moment to relish the FLC curve of surprise that burned through her now crimson eyes. Then a vicious rabbit punch struck her skull and left her spinning into the street. Oh, she went down with a gasp and landed on her rear. Hey, no fair. That was a cheap shot. All's fair in love and war. Something in him saw that as a victory, petty though it was. He pumped a fist into the air, slurring his words only a little. I win, ek. Yang was a sore loser. Who knew? Not he, because he was wholly unprepared as she yanked at an ankle and sent him spilling down into the street. His head embraced an upturned water pipe and stars burst before his vision. For a moment, just a moment, his vision went white. Yang took full advantage of his brief blindness and landed atop him, straddling her hips against his. Not bad, Whiskers. She gasped the words out. Haven't had a fight like that in a while. Naruto groaned weakly. I aim to please. Sure do. She granted him a tipsy grin. What'd you say to round 2? Probably a bad idea. All that alcohol was finally getting to him. His head ached abominably and, see Mir, you. Something told him that wasn't what she meant. Yang leaned forward, cupping his face in her hands. Golden hair tickled his nose and Naruto stubbornly clamped down on a sneeze. Perhaps they were both punch drunk. Maybe it was the tanks they'd crashed through. They were, the both of them, soaked in whiskey right about now. He could scarcely think, let alone bring himself to react in time. He tried to prop himself up on one arm but she shoved him back down. Her forehead touched his, and their noses brushed. Surely she wasn't going to? Nope, she was. Something warm and soft pressed against his lips, light as a feather's touch and gone thrice as fast. He blinked up at her, mind gone blank. His first embrace it most assuredly was not repressed the memory, but it left him reeling all the same. Moi. Young leaned back and wiped her mouth with a cheery hiccup. And there's your reward. She swayed a little atop him, eyes bleary as her hips ground against his. Care for another. She's definitely drunk. Feels like I am too. Nah, we're. Fine. Damn it, Kurama. She didn't give him a chance to answer, for she leaned down again. Her mouth molded against his, head tilting for a better angle. And something stirred in Naruto, rather, something awoke. With a vengeance. Funny thing about alcohol. It doesn't just lower inhibitions, it absolutely shatters them. Despite his own initial reservations, the buzzed blonde found himself responding. His hands rose to cup her waist, holding her steady. Yang made a pleased noise against his mouth and pushed against him. This close, he could smell her. She reeked of whiskey, of course, but with it came the faint scent of fire and lilacs. It was a strange smell, intoxicating and deadly. He wanted more. All right, Frisky. Yang pulled away, batted his hands back with a laugh. That's enough. She hiccuped again, slurring her words. Gonna do something. Her words peaked into a startled cry when he pursued her, gasping as his lips alighted on her neck. Stupid at this rate. Hey, come on. She mewed a little when he didn't cease. Quit it. You're rilling me up, damn it. Stupid sounded really good right about now. His trousers were uncomfortably tight, and she was so warm, so soft. When her hands fisted against his jacket and started to play with it, he knew he had to stop. Any further and he'd really do something foolish. He gave her a nudge and she toppled back. Too close. Geez, this is why I shouldn't drink. With a groan, he turned his gaze back to Yang. She'd not budged from her place in his lap. He didn't want to move her. No doubt she'd have a hellish hangover come morning. As would he. Strong to believe all this started over a few strands of hair. In hindsight it seemed almost silly. Downright childish even. Friendships and rivalries had been formed from less. And more. Women were crazy. He didn't know what to make of her. But he could at least do something. I'm sorry about your hair. He winced and reached up toward her. Here, let me fix it. He touched a marked hand to the side of her face, regrowing the golden locks in no time at all. It was like FLC King SWCH. She leaned back and those scarlet slits FLC'd back into lilac as her grin regained some of its It did nothing for her glazed eyes. He nudged her back and she tumbled off him, still looking every bit like the cat that caught what was the bird again? Right, the canary. That was the one. Gimme, you throw a mean right hook. She grimaced, rubbing her jaw. Not even Uncle Kuro punches that strong. You wouldn't happen to know a woman named Raven, would you? Naruto tilted his head at her and frowned. What, like a bird? Yang grimaced. Don't ask about the name. He winced as his stomach protested violently. Can I ask about food instead? She balked back at him. What, seriously? You haven't eaten all day? His stomach growled anew. Not really. Does whiskey count? His fellow blonde CC her head at him, regarding him like a wary dragon. Her thoughts remained a mystery, but eventually she seemed to reach a decision. She didn't so much stand as she did stagger her way over to him, and even then she nearly fell again, only narrowly catching herself on a way. Still, she made it to his side. Come on, Whiskers. I'd pay my debts. She reached down, grabbed him by the hand and hoisted him upright. Let's get you something to eat, it'll be my treat. Lidded eyes regarded him. Maybe even a little more. Yup, definitely buzzed. Still, food. After all this. Yes, please. Naruto let himself be tugged along, leaning against her but a little. Well, if you're buying. Sirens wailed in the distance, cutting him short. Yang froze like a deer in the headlights. Naruto slammed into her back and nearly knocked her over. When she didn't move he turned to follow her gaze, only to see yet more of those strange metal vehicles from before. A number of them blocked the road ahead. Those were a lot of lights. Why were they coming closer? Oh, CRP. Cops. His fellow brawler winced. Might have to get a rain check on that meal. Despite Naruto's best efforts, an angry whine escaped him. Nuo. Yang squeezed his palm gently, swaying but a little. She hiccuped. I'm sure it'll be fine. An angry officer burst out of a car. You're both under arrest. It was not fine. Not at all. Nope. Well, this is unfortunate. No, Yang sniped from her cot, you think. Naruto furrowed his brow as he regarded the ceiling of their cell. Is that all you have to say? You a great kisser. Rarg. A pillow pelted his face, momentarily muffling his grin. Still the blonde kept both hands folded behind his head as he considered the ceiling above. Maybe it was the booze, because he was still feeling rather calm after all that. Perhaps even a little too calm. An almost pleasant haze had fallen over his thoughts. With all that anger and frustration out of his system, he felt quite nice, actually. As if he were lying on a warm rock sunning himself on a mild summer day. Speaking of warm, you fight pretty good. Yang flopped down beside him with a grin and yanked the pillow off his face. Gave me a black eye and everything. Right back at you. He chortled a little. Weren't you angry with me a second ago? A little, she confessed, crossing both legs beneath her. I got over it. Better out than in, I always say. Besides, she FLC'd his side, we're stuck in here together. Might as well get comfortable. A blonde brow CC'd. She smacked at his chest. Down, boy. The other brow rose to match the first. You started it. To CH. Her face turned a lovely shade of red as she looked away. You've got an answer for everything, don't you? I try. His gaze swept back to their cage once more, considering it. If this was what passed for a cell in this world, it was woefully inadequate. Those bars were frail and rusted by time, they wouldn't hold Yang, let alone him. He could walk right out of here, and no one would be able to stop him. He was almost tempted to at that, if only because he was still freaking hungry and his promised meal had yet to materialize. Blast it, he really needed to eat something. You do realize we could break out of here. We could, he allowed, but I don't want to be hounded by the police at every turn. They wouldn't be a threat to him, but he'd have to put them down to discourage pursuit. Put them down strong and without killing at that. Pretty sure that would make him a criminal. He didn't want to spend his second life flitting from place hounded by bounty hunters and the like. He wanted to enjoy it. This era seemed to be at peace for the most part. Might as well enjoy it, no. Hey, Young chimed suddenly, capturing his attention once more. You're going to Beacon, right? Beacon. Naruto pivoted to regard her from where he lay. The hell's a beacon? Really playing up the whole country bumpkin angle, ain't ya? Her elbow nudged him in the ribs. Didn't even tickle. Come on, stop joking. With skills like yours you've got to be headed there. Her brow furrowed anew as she considered him again. Unless you're already one. Nah, no chance. She tossed her head from side to side, sending her hair swaying. Too young. Oh, sweet summer child. You have no idea. No, really. The whiskered warrior sat up. What in blazes is a beacon? I literally have no idea what you're talking about. Wait, for real. Wide lilac eyes regarded him intently. Narrowed. You been living under a rock or something? Yes. He flung up his hands. Why is that so strong to understand? I was literally asleep for years. Her brow furrowed. What, were you in a coma or something? You know what? Fine. Let her misunderstand. This was giving him a headache, and it wasn't far from the truth. He was in a coma. Technically, he'd slept for a terribly long time. Maybe it would have been better if he never woke up at all, if he simply continued to dream endlessly beneath the earth. But there could be no going back to that now. For better or worse, he was awake, and the deed was done. Sure, let's go with that. All right, champ. She slapped his back with a cheeky grin. Next you're gonna tell me you don't know what a scroll is. The silence was telling. What the actual hell? Did you lose your memories too? Naruto shrugged. Let her roll with it. Easier than explaining all this tripe. Geez, let us CK. I'm serious, though. His fellow blonde scooted a bit closer until her hips brushed his. You've got talent to fight me to a standstill like that. That and restraint. If he hadn't held back, Young would have been a pretty red smear on the ground. He tried not to think about that. Probably best for everyone if he kept tabs on his strength for now. Unwilling to broach that particular subject, he opted to steer the conversation to safer waters. This beacon of yours. He frowned at the name. Tell me about it. Sure thing, champ. Young did her best. She'd never seen it firsthand, but she painted a grand picture all the same, a fine school for huntsmen and huntresses, a bastion of strength devoted to fighting off creatures called Grimm. Curiosity got the better of him and he asked about those, too. She was more than happy to indulge him, even if he sometimes felt like she was babying him a bit. It was a small price to pay to learn about the state of this world. But in the end, there was only so much Young could tell him. Suo, the buxom rocked back on her legs. Having heard all that, what now? What do I want to do? I'm not really sure. Tan fingers drummed loosely against the floor. Already saved everyone once. Maybe I'll try to conquer the world with ramen this time around. He waggled an eyebrow at her when she jiggled. But me, go to Beacon. Why would I want to do that? I already sat through school once. No way am I doing it again. You say that, but you haven't seen Beacon. She looped an arm around his shoulders. Just think about it, champ. That word again. His brow furrowed at her, eyes squinting intently. Why do you keep calling me that? Seems as good a nickname as any. Better than Whiskers. It's got some bite to it, you know. Kurama preened a little. No, a lot. Hell, I'm starting to like this girl. You would. She's clearly stroking your ego. Naruto lifted his chin. Still not doing it. Fine. What about teaching? Me. A guffaw burst out of him, short and sharp as he sprawled in her lap. Why would I? Then he frowned. Never really done that. Might have to think about that. Probably not. Don't think I'd have the patience for it. That's the point. She flung up her arms. You'd be an awesome teacher. And I'm starting to think you're just an enabler. PSSH, me. No. What would he even teach? He knew only the barest bones about Grimm in this world. Moreover, he didn't think the people here had chakra anymore. It seemed lost to time. Or maybe they hadn't, and their coils had fallen dormant by time and lack of use. Something to look into at a later date. This was his world after all, just changed by time and so many other things. Oddly enough, the notion calmed him. Hey, Kurama prodded him first. You thinking what I'm thinking? He was. If this is still our world, we could. Yes, we could. But do we want to? That was the question. On a whim, he cast a quick glance at Young and stretched out his senses. What he found there nearly had him reeling back. She burned like a fire in mind, all bright and gold and sunny. There was certainly something to be seen there, but it didn't quite feel like chakra. What had she called it? Aura. Beneath that, a smaller flame, so tiny you had to squint. Their door swung open with a harsh clank, cutting his thought short. A weary-looking guard sauntered in, his blue uniform rumpled and creased. Naruto sniffed once, then frowned. The man smelled of stress and sweat. His eyes were a strange shade of silver, framed by a strong jawline with a messy mop of auburn hair going on gray. Strange combination. It looked like someone had browbeat him within an inch of his life, dragged him back, and done it again. Poor BSD already took one look at them and shook his head. You lovebirds done in there. Belatedly, Naruto realized he was still leaning against Young. She was warm. He didn't feel like moving just yet. Yeah. He stretched a little, drawing a flush from his fellow blonde as he squirmed. And you are. No one important. The guard jerked a thumb over his shoulder. You're free to go. Young perked up. Already? But I only called Dad 5 minutes ago. Not you, Blondie. The guard pivoted and stabbed a finger at Naruto instead. You. Naruto tilted his head. Me. Now it was his turn to blink. I don't know anyone in this city with that kind of dough. Really? He didn't. Who the hell did that? Dunno. The man offered a helpless shrug. Some broad. Said she was a friend of yours, or something. That's the long and short of it. You leaving, or what? A woman. Pretty sure the only friend I have is her. He poked an elbow against Young's side. Sorry. The brawler threw her arms around his neck. You do care. Look, pal. The guard sighed. We barely have enough room in our cells as is. I don't care. He jerked his chin at a grinning Yang. If that's your long-lost sister or your wife, her smile died an ugly death. Wife? Wait. Too soon. My heart isn't ready. But your bail's been paid. He raised his voice over her frantic babbling. Which means someone else is sharing this cell with her. Either get out or we'll drag you out. A FLC curve of a smile touched the corner of Naruto's mouth. Yeah, you really don't want to do that. Then get. Naruto FLC had a reluctant look over his shoulder. I'll be fine. Young patted his arm thrice for good measure. Don't worry about me. Dad'll have me out in a jiffo. Lilac eyes widened, flitted from one end of the cell to another. She gulped. On second thought, maybe you should scram while you can. He won't be happy to see you. Naruto squinted at her, unable to comprehend why, and feeling a little hurt for it. Why not? You're a boy, she said, and I'm his sunny little dragon. Realization slammed down like a guillotine. Oh, dealing with an overprotective father wasn't on his to-do list tonight. Nope. He stood to leave. Wait a minute. Young burst up, grabbed him by his jacket and reeled him back in. One for the road. Her lips crushed against his, strong enough to bruise. Fast, strong, and quick. Just like her. She bit his lip as she pulled away, marking him. Naruto blinked once, twice, thrice, now. Biwa, he managed eloquently. Young flashed him a wink. See you around, champ. Then she shoved him out the cell. In the end, Naruto never found out who posted his bail. No one was waiting for him when he emerged from the police department. Not a soul. Only an empty street. He spied a child across the street playing with a doll made of straw. Nothing more. With that, released a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. Well, that was disappointing. Really, it was almost anticlimactic. And here he'd been expecting something like one of those old crime dramas. Someone tugged at his sleeve. He looked down to find the urchin gazing up at him. His gaze took her in at a glance, her skin dirty and smudged with ash, her hair the darkest shade of midnight she'd ever seen. Her eyes were a striking shade of gold, like twin pits of poison only. She told me to give you this, mister. They pressed a thin slip of paper into his hand. She paid well. His gaze snapped to the parcel, then back up. Wait, I don't. When he looked back, the girl was gone. Just gone. Not run around a corner, not slipped out of sight. Just gone. He shivered a little as a cold breeze whisked its way down the street. What little he wore didn't offer much in the way of protection. Powerful he may be, but even he wasn't immune to the cold. He craned his neck left, then right, straining for any sign of the girl. He found nothing and his brow furrowed. Weird. For lack of anything else to do, he unfolded the card and considered it for a moment. It wasn't white but red as BLD itself. The writing within was proven clean and crisp, penned by a firm hand in dark ink. I saw your fight. Half the city saw it. You handled yourself well. Perhaps you'd like to make proper use of those talents. Warm regards, Sewell. That wasn't mysterious at all. Beneath the message lay a series of numbers. Naruto frowned anew. The hell was this? Some kind of code or something? Young had said something about a scroll, but he didn't have one of those. What even was a scroll, anyway? She'd never told him that bit. Probably not important. He committed the sequence to memory, crushed the paper into and threw it over his shoulder without a second thought. Phew, talk about a close call. Glad we got that sorted. Kurama disagreed. You do realize Young's father is going to be furious with you for leaving her in that cell. With me. He crossed both arms behind his head. No, this'll all blow over. Not like we did anything criminal. A jaw-popping yawn stopped him short. Although I wouldn't say no to finding a bed for the night. It's been a long day and a while since we screwed around like that. His stomach offered a surly growl, turning his smile into a scowl. And I'm still hungry, damn it. Easier said than done. We have no money, unless you're keen on picking pockets. Nah, just need somewhere to camp out for the night. He reasoned to himself. I'll explain everything in the morning. He had been asleep for so very long now. He wasn't exactly aware of the state of the world. The hour was late and the moon was full, shining down in all its shattered splendor. Well, that was new. Last he remembered, the moon wasn't busted up like that. Another thing that had been warped in his absence. He was a relic of a bygone age, woken to a world that both was and was not his own. Things had changed, and he had to change with them. A groan echoed in the back of his skull. In that case, wake me up 9 centuries from now. No, he mentally shook his partner awake. No sleeping. We already tried that. Sleeping wouldn't get them anywhere. Besides, he was awake now. Surely he'd woken for a reason. There had to be a reason. Maybe it was all that blasted digging. Maybe there was something he needed to do in this era, something, anything. If he'd genuinely woken on a fluke, the flip of a coin. What did that say about him? Or, a tiny little voice whispered, we could see where this takes us. We already saved the world once. Aren't we owed a bit of fun? Naruto nearly missed a step. It almost seemed selfish. But what else was there to do? There was no great evil to fight here, none that he knew of at any rate. He knew so little about this world, maybe it was time to do a bit of digging. But where? When? It was late and he was tired, for crying out loud. Until he made a plan, just going with the flow sounded as anything. All right, he muttered to himself. Just go with the flow for now. I can do that. Right, but Kurama snorted. You'll be saving the world by the end of the decade. Mark my words. In the end, Naruto's wandering path carried him somewhere most familiar. He recognized the club only by its sign. Most of the front had been sadly trashed. Its patrons were nowhere to be seen, though that was to be expected. A twinge of guilt plucked at his heart. He really did feel bad about smashing up the place. That guilt only intensified when he saw a familiar face brushing away a pile of debris near the entrance. Poor BSTRD looked positively haggard. Hey, buddy, remember me? Haichin looked up, broom in hand, and turned white as a sheet. Not you again. I really am sorry about what happened. He raised his hands to show himself unarmed. Let me make it up to you. Look, kid, Junior growled, unless you've got an army hiding under that coat of yours, I don't want to hear Kurama's side. That's low-hanging fruit and you know it. Naruto crossed his fingers. Don't care. Poof. A neat 3 shadow clones materialized behind him with a rush of smoke. Junior's broom clattered to the floor. His jaw looked fit to fall with it. Why, you, what the hell? What was it about an army? Faced with such awe, Naruto couldn't help but preen a little. Look, I'm willing to bargain. I'll lend you these guys as a cleanup crew if you let me stay here tonight. I need somewhere to rest my head, you know. Junior recovered so fast he nearly gave himself whiplash. Strangely enough, he didn't sense any negative intent from the man. He seemed eager to please. Almost too eager. Fine, you can stay in the attic with the twins. But just for tonight. I'll be gone by morning. He beamed. Scout's honor. We'll see about that. Melanie, Milsha. Someone latched onto his arm. Naruto looked down, only mild surprised to find the twins from before. Oh, hey, it's you two. He beamed back at them. Sorry about the mess earlier. I'll help you clean it up, I swear. Milsha regarded with intently. We'll hold you to that. Melanie pulled him closer. You must be tired. Why don't we show you to your room? Got anything to eat? Their grins were nothing short of smug. Trust us, there's plenty inside. They didn't look half bad now that they weren't sneering at him or trying to lop his head off. Wait a minute. If he didn't know better, he could have sworn they were eager to please him. Why, were they afraid? Nah, couldn't be that. He was a good guy. Nothing to be afraid of here. Nope, not a thing. He swayed on his feet. Right, he was definitely still a little tipsy after all. But maybe that wasn't so bad. Twins, huh? He laughed. Could be worse. With a shrug, Naruto let them lead him upstairs. Naruto awoke in a warm bed. That wasn't much of a concern on the wayward warrior's part, if only because the covers were soft, red, and he wasn't yet dead. Just satisfyingly sore. Strange, but he'd both seen and lived through far worse in his day, so again, not much of a problem on that front. So what if he didn't recognize the ceiling? So what if his mouth was drier than a desert? He had slept in stranger places than this. Maybe he hadn't been that drunk after all. Everything was fine. Just sit up and mistakes were made. His skull protested violently the moment he tried to move, a bolt of white-hot light lancing through the back of his head with such force that he found himself crashing back down to the pillows. Blue eyes slammed shut as he groaned. Nope, screw this. Hangovers SCK. He immediately decided he wasn't having any of it. Never drinking again. Oh, did anyone get the number of that bus? At least I think it was a bus. And where are my clothes? He rose with a groan, eyes still blurry, and his hand fell upon something soft. A pillow. He pushed off it to steady himself. Thoughtlessly, his fingers squeezed. Someone moaned. Naruto looked down and had something of an out-of-body experience, in that he heard himself gasp, saw the dark-haired young woman spooned against his right arm, saw another tucked into his left with her head upon his chest, saw their state of undress and knew instantly that it mirrored his own. Neither wore so much as a stitch of clothing. One of them had their legs twined with his. Blue eyes bulged. You have got to be kidding me. Twitching fingers removed themselves from the girl's chest. Slowly, very slowly. Instinct nearly had him cry out like a fool, shouting and squalling as he demanded answers. It was only an ironclad sense of self-preservation that stomped him. He stomped that urge into oblivion. To speak was to die. They were the both of them sound asleep, and he had the strangest feeling they wouldn't take kindly to being woken in such a fashion. Oh, I get it. He lowered himself back to the pillows with a sigh. I'm still asleep. This is a dream. I'll wake up any second now. Kurama foiled that fledgling hope with a yawn. What a night. Twins, I was beginning to think you didn't have it in you. Naruto slammed his eyes shut even as his face scrunched up in a scowl. Wait, what? Did I? Yup. He looked down. Yuminwe. Bingo. Smug fox. You really made those girls scream. His bleary mind struggled to recall anything and was alarmed when he actually succeeded. Soft arms coiling around his neck as her legs wrapped round his waist. Full breasts bushing up against his chest, half-lidded eyes looking longingly up at him as her hips ground against his. Another pair of lips embraced his neck, whispering soft nothings in his ear, begging for her turn and while Shelketer thernai sexual EOW. Belatedly, he realized he had pinched himself to snap out of it. Once, twice, thrice for good measure. Oh, pain. Well, that happened. No dream this. You didn't feel pain in a dream. He was fairly certain of that, and with that he wasn't sure he wanted to laugh or cry. His first time, and he could barely even recall anything. An almost pleasant soreness confirmed his suspicions. He still didn't dare open his eyes, if only because he was painfully sober and had no idea how to explain a LCK of this rise and shine, handsome. Someone embraced his neck, sending an electric thrill shooting down his spine. Because now he was very much awake, and keenly intimately aware of everything, of things he hadn't noticed before. The weight of her body, however slight, against his own, her breath warm upon his skin, his own pulse hammering in his veins. Well, time to face the music, then. Blue eyes fluttered open to meet striking jade orbs only a few inches from his own. Mate, she really did have nice eyes. He vaguely recalled complimenting her on them last night while they fought. She was. Damn it. Naruto fumbled for a name. Last night had been such a blur. It started with an M, hadn't it? Melanie. Right. Her smile told him he'd skirted disaster. Safe. Uo, so he can tell the difference. She leaned forward and delivered a light to the lips. Extra points. But does he remember mine? Someone took hold of his head and tilted it backward just so. Worm's lips touched his again, but hungrier, her teeth biting at his lip as she withdrew. In short order, Naruto found himself gazing at a familiar face, similar to that of Melanie, but different all the same. Her eyes were sharper, her face just a little leaner. Milsha. Her name case easier now than he recalled her twin. That's your name, right? She wrinkled her nose. Boo, you're no fun. Told you he'd remember. Melanie sprawled onto her back. I win the bet. Pay up, sis. You'll get your DMN money. Naruto couldn't help but shake his head as they began to bicker. By the sage, twins. How the hell did that happen? Must have been the booze. He couldn't tell if he was DMN lucky or this was the first domino in a never-ending series of disasters. Hopefully the former. Surely his luck couldn't be that bad. Twins, for crying out loud. He planted a hand against his forehead. It's entirely too early for this. 11 o'clock, actually. Militia rolled over, propping herself up on his stomach. So I'd say it's pretty DMN late. Her sibling stood with languid grace, giving him a show he'd never dreamed of. A green iris taunted him over her shoulder. Unless you're too sore to get up. Hey, he growled at the slight. Don't get snappy. I beat you once already, I can beat you again. She pivoted with speed and moved her face against his. There's the guy from last night. Good to see him again. Kurama, little help, here. Well, we're alive. Might as well enjoy it. Simple as they were, those words resonated with him a second life. His chance to start again. No towering villains, no existential crisis to thwart, no crazy gods. None that he knew of, at any rate. When was the last time he'd lived? No chasing crazy friends, stopping insane plans, or shinobi with a god complex. He'd always been fighting. He was good at fighting, almost as much as he was when it came to talking. What's the harm in it? An insidious little thought crawled into his ear. Why not live a little for now? He let them pull him back to the bed. Time ceased to be. Junior awaited him when he finally stumbled downstairs an hour later. And he was grinning, the smug BSDRD. Have fun, you. Naruto jabbed a finger against his chest. Not a word. Sure. The bartender, whom he was beginning to suspect was anything but, raised his hand and stepped back with lazy grace. His smirk remained ironclad. Your secret is safe with me. Didn't see a thing. Try as he might, Naruto couldn't help but wary of this man now that morning had come. Although he sensed nothing but positivity from the fellow, he seemed far too cheery for his own good. Hadn't he been mad at him yesterday? He remembered that much. Junior had been nothing short of livid with him after the mess he made. So why the sudden turnaround? It didn't make any sense. What's gotten into you? I'm in a good mood. Your boys did good work. Hai gestured to the club itself, nearly good as new. We got this place cleaned up in no time at all thanks to them. His mouth twitched. I thought there was a lot less rubble. Oops, that was the hangover talking. Shame he couldn't just cure that, too. All right, Hai subsided with a frown. You can give as good as you get. I like that. Right, Naruto plonked down on the first intact seat he could find. How long have I been here? Everything's a blur. Hey, just the night. A hand waved. Not that long. A pall of silence pushed itself between the two strangers. Naruto grimaced into it as a thorn of guilt pricked at his bleeding heart. Look, he scratched at the back of his head and looked away. I really am sorry about the bar. Didn't mean to wreck the place. That's on me. Yeah. Junior paused, regarding him with narrow eyes. Big words from a huntsman. His tone was colder than an ice jutsu. I've heard those words before. Forgive me if I take them with a grain of salt. Hey, no, wait, I'm not a huntsman. Hai squinted at him anew, then looked at him. Really looked at him. In the light of day he must have seen something that he missed last night, because he leaned away and took a single step backward. There it was, a touch of wariness now as he remembered just what he was capable of. Naruto didn't like it. He wasn't here to inspire fear, he just wanted to live in this strange new era. You're really not from around here, are you? This again. He flung up his arms in a fit. I already told you. I've been asleep, sealed underground for years. All right, look, I'll be frank with you. Hai set his glass down. If you're not a huntsman, then I don't know what the hell you are. Regardless, I don't want to be your enemy. Another emerged, and he poured a shot of fresh whiskey into it, then summarily slammed it back. Thus fortified by liquid courage, he continued. You're clearly on another level. You made mincemeat of Melanie and Milsha out there. A glance to the stairs, rueful as it was, had him quirking a brow. And they're clearly sweet on you. Naruto felt the tips of his ears burn pink. Among other things. So let's make a deal. A hand entered his field of vision, leaving him to balk down at it. You said it yourself, you know Jack SHD about this place. The ghost of a smile touched his worn face. I, on the other hand, make it my business to know things. What say we combine forces? I help you with your little problem, you help me with mine. Not sure I like the way you phrase that. I'm no trying to swindle ya, kid. Call it an equivalent exchange. He supposed there was no harm in it. These people couldn't hurt him. He wasn't sure there was anyone here who could if he didn't let them. That was an arrogance on his part, of even a threat. It was the truth. One didn't easily would a jinkariki, let alone the container of the 10 tails. Still not used to that. Liked it better when I hid 9. Don't be a crybaby. What's done is done. Fine. He hazarded a grin. I don't really have anywhere else to go at the moment. First things first, high-temporized. We need to get you a scroll. And you have no idea what that is. Naruto shook his head, drawing another sigh from his host. Fine. Me and the girls will get you squared away. Maybe then you can help me with a little problem of mine. His brow drew down. I ain't committing a crime. Not asking you to. The rejoinder was swift. Just hoping you can get rid of some uppity beach who thinks she owns me and mine. Speaking of which, just how strong are you? Naruto couldn't quite keep the smile from his face. Strong enough. Why the sudden interest? Who's asking? I gathered that much. I claimed the seat beside him. Is it possible to learn this power? His grin grew. Not from a huntsman. Of course, he wasn't about to simply reawaken chakra for everyone under the sun. Maybe not anyone at all. These people need to earn it. Prove they were worthy of it. He didn't know Hai or the Malachites well enough to entrust them with such a powerful gift. If they proved themselves to be good, rounded the bend and made something good of their lives, sure, he'd consider it. Until then, not a chance. Wow, that actually sounded profound. Color me impressed. Go bite your tail, Kurama. The fox laughed, only to subside it as the main door creaked open behind them. Hello, a low voice crooned. I do hope I'm not interrupting you too. Damn it, Hai swore. Speak of the devil and she appears. Devil who, now? Naruto followed his gaze and found himself staring a woman cut from sin itself. Long dark hair framed a pale face from which keen golden eyes shone, lurking above a pale smile. Wrapped in a fine red silk dress that hinted at secrets best left unspoken. She moved with poise and purpose, the sway in her hips nothing short of deliberate. She didn't see the twins slipping down the stairs and moving into position behind her, flanking her. Why would she? Her attention was fixed firmly on him. More fool she. The woman took one look at him and made a beeline for him. Well, we meet at last. Naruto blinked, somewhat taken aback. Do I know you? You're weird. A spark of anger flashed through her face. I paid your bail, fool. He blinked anew, vaguely recalling last night. Oh, that was you. Thanks for that. Wait. Naruto's smile became a frown. Negativity. This woman reeked of it. I think, he continued slowly, you should tell me who you are. But of course, golden eyes flashed, sensing his challenge and rising to it, from one predator to another. I think we can help each other. Help this woman. Unlikely. Still, she hadn't tried to harm him and she had helped, in a loose sense of the word. Unfortunately for Cinder, she had no idea who she was courting. Poor Cinder. She was not prepared. Ruby Rose tilted her head. Then she tilted it a little more. Nearly 90 degrees now, much to Young's chagrin. Hey, sis. She all but heard the confusion in her sibling's voice and prayed for death. You've got a lot of red marks on you. A pause. You get into a fight with a briar patch or something. Yang whined weakly through her teeth. Yeah, something like that, Rubes. Is that why you're hiding from Dad like a chicken? Not so naive after all, little sister. Meep. Even with her gaze fixed firmly on the mirror, Yang could feel those silver eyes boring into her shoulders. Not from anger or jealousy really, Ruby avoided most people like the plague, to say nothing of boys, but genuine curiosity and concern. Somehow that made it worse. Each hickey was difficult to detect among the countless SCS and bruises she'd received during her brawl. Unless one knew what to look for. Unless she knew where to look. And she knew. Oh, yes, she knew exactly where to look now. Morning had come, and with it freedom from her cell. Yet not her memories. So many memories. Yang craned her neck, wincing a little as her shoulder protested. Last night was a blur, but what a glorious blur it was. His hands on her, holding her close as embrace her neck while she bit his shoulder. Her fingers fumbling at his jacket as she climbed atop him. His lips on hers as her hips ground against his. Too many clothes. Off. She wanted them off, wanted to feel his skin on hers and down girl. Young's face flooded with color as she snapped back to reality. Stop. Cease. Desist. She slapped her cheeks with both hands until her face stung. Young, kill me, she groaned. Make it quick. Just smack me on the back of the head and be done with it. And there it was, the crux of all her problems. She remembered him. Naruto, his face, his name, everything. Sure, copious amounts of alcohol had been involved, but still she'd enjoyed it and... Aorg. Young reared back and slammed her head into both hands, muffling a groan, much to her sister's dismay. Maybe if she just hid under her bed she'd be able to get away from this humiliation. Yup, sounds grand. No need for beacon or any of that awful nonsense. Nope, not happening. Yang considered herself in the mirror and winced anew. Really, there was no hiding the marks on her neck, or her shoulders, or her black eye. Not when faced with something like this. Dad was going to kill her when he figured this out. And he would. He always knew. She'd already fobbed him off with the excuse of a shower, but it was impossible to hide all these marks, or the strange feeling they left behind. For all the chaos they'd caused last night, they'd had one hell of a time. She wanted to see him again. He'd lit a fire in her belly. She wanted that. Her knees twisted to and fro, writhing in thinly anticipation as the ghost of a smile touched her face. Ruby sighed, of course. You're blushing, sis. She whirled and whipped a pillow at her. And not. Fortunately or unfortunately, depending on your point of view, the door to their room crashed open and their argument was summarily forgotten. Why, you ask? Because Taeyong Zio Long stalked in, shotgun in hand. All right, I see Siketa with righteous intent. Who punched my sunny little dragon? I want names. Who is he and where do I find him? Young's face went chalk white. Daddy, no. Ruby toppled backward with a giggle. 0, 0, 0. This wasn't happening. No, this could not be happening, because if this wasn't some fever dream, Cinder needed to reconsider her life choices. She was a MSTR manipulator, able to sway the hearts and minds of men and women alike. All fell to her sooner or later, be it through fear, power, or even base. There was only one woman she feared in this world, and Salem was currently a continent away, plotting in her tower. So why? Who was this blonde fool? And why was he utterly at his ease? For the life of her, Cinderfall couldn't figure him out. He was an enigma to her, a puzzle she longed to unravel, yet found herself unequal to the task. Time and time again she tried to bait him into speaking his intentions, or at the very least leverage his debt to her, to no avail. It just didn't seem possible. Anyone capable of fighting a huntress, even one in training, to a standstill, was an asset she could use. Denser than a black hole, this one. Was he deliberately being obtuse? Did he not understand the precarious position he found himself in? No matter what she said, what she tried, what she did, he just didn't seem to get the message. Subtle promises of power. Nope. Riches unimaginable. Didn't want them. An unbelievable night with her. Sailed right over his spiky blonde head. Really, she resorted to just about everything short of overt threats, and somehow she didn't think those would faze him any more than her other offers. He seemed content to have thrown his lot in with Junior and the Malachites, a fact the little trio seemed far too smug about. Her gaze met High's behind the bar. Cheeky Biestiardi waved at her. So, he thought he could slip his leash, did he? He would learn. There would be a reckoning for this indignity. She swore it. Her scowl redoubled when the mobster didn't flinch. While High had cleverly positioned himself so that this curious young man was between the two of them, she was now well aware of the twins lurking at her back. They thought they had her cornered, did they? It seemed another lesson was in order. Once she put this fool in his place. Nope, the young man said suddenly, snapping her back to reality. I don't think we can help each other after all. You're annoying. A tight knot of anger coiled in Cinder's gut, a serpent snaking through her every thought. Who was this neophyte to speak her in such a way? He looked weak, yet he spoke to her not as if they were equals, but as if she were beneath him. Lesser. It burned. He wasn't intimidated by her, and while she could respect that, she loathed being looked down upon. It was those eyes, those diamond blue eyes. Calm, she cautioned herself. Mustn't lash out. Listen to me, she began anew, gripping the edge of the table with smoldering hands. I am offering you the opportunity to discharge your debt to me. We can both benefit from this. Oh, I am listening. Naruto CLC cut his tongue once as he reclined in his chair. You see, that's the problem. His smile didn't waver in the least. I don't like what I'm hearing, or sensing. He sniffed once, as though scenting the air. I don't think you're any friend of mine. Sensing. Whatever was he on about? Was that a semblance of some sort? Cinder, was it? He continued softly, addressing her as one might a wayward child. I've had a rough couple of days. I appreciate you being blunt with me. Really, I do. His smile said otherwise. But right now I am this close, he held his thumb just over his forefinger, to hitting you with a very nasty jutsu. There was a shiver in the air as he spoke the words. So here's what you, a tan finger poked her forehead, drawing a scowl from the woman in question, are going to do for me. His eyes bored into hers like twin daggers. First, he held up a finger, you're going to shut up. Second, another finger rose to mirror the first. You're going to stand up and turn around. Third, 3 digits now, and there could be no mistaking the bite to his words now. You'll walk your pretty little arse right back out that door. Right now. And if I refuse? Naruto cut his head and squinted, regarding her a fox might a hare. Something in those gentle blue eyes shifted. Before her very eyes those placid azure orbs became a rimmed shade of violet. Color seemed to bleed from his skin, his flesh gone a pale ghastly gray. But only for a moment. She blinked and it passed, leaving her to wonder if she'd imagined it at all. Had she? Surely her mind was playing tricks on her. You know, you remind me of an old friend. Cinder edged back in her seat. I do. She had a bad feeling about this. Yup. The whiskered warrior leaned forward, steeping his hands to lay his chin atop them. He was pretty arrogant, too. I wonder what he'd think of you. His lips pursed suddenly and his attention seemed to fall inward. Fair point, Kurama. At least Sasuke had a reason for what he did. Her brow furrowed anew. What in blazes was a Kurama? I'm thinking you should leave. I called from the bar. For your own good. Leave. Golden eyes fluttered in a slow blink. Here at last, her tongue betrayed her. If you think I'm some damsel to be intimidated, you have another thing coming. Right, I tried talking. Baleful blue eyes narrowed upon hers. 1,000 years of death, it is. Cinder slammed to her feet. What is 1,000 years of death? Those words peaked into a startled shriek as something strong slammed into her hindquarters from behind. Tamed, her feet came unstuck from the floor as her head struck the ceiling and stars burst before her vision. Up became down, and down became ground as the floor rushed up to greet her like an old friend. She struck it at speed and left a decidedly cinder-shaped impression behind. She tried to speak, but only gibberish emerged. Sorry. His smile was pure ice as she sprawled down to the floor. I think I've had enough of you for one day. Someone was laughing at her. Several someones. She couldn't hear them over the roaring in her ears. Cinder climbed her feet. One hand flew to her posterior, face gone red like roses. You dare. Naruto's left leg blurred, upended a table and its drinks alike in her face. Cinder raised an arm to defend herself, scowling at the rapidly spreading stain across her dress. A shadow flitted behind her in the chaos. She saw rather than felt a sudden FLC curve movement in her peripheral vision, just for an instant, a single sliver of a second. And then, nothing personal, kid. Taut fingers scythed into the side of her neck, caught her by the shoulder and yanked her back down before she could hope to escape. Do you know why I avoid killing people? His forehead crashed against hers, eyes bold and intent. Because it's easy. THRUCK. He rammed a knee into their torso. Ribs shattered like brittle glass as she hurtled through a wall. Once you've started, it's strong to stop. Crunch. 5 firm fingers slammed into Cinder's throat, turning her reply to a raspy croak. She wheezed and stumbled away, gasping for air that wouldn't come. Fire FLC curd at her fingertips and was summarily snuffed out as his hand closed around hers. Bone didn't just break. It absolutely splintered. She grit her teeth around a scream, only for an open palm to strike her across the face and send her sprawling once more. I've seen so many people die. So many. Somewhere in the background, a scroll CLC kid. She was too busy snarling into the floor to hear it. Congratulations. A shadow fell over her and she looked up, squinting around her rapidly swelling visage. I'm angry. Haven't felt that in a while. Bye now. A hand reached down for her. Have a timeout, think about what you've done. And don't come back. This couldn't be happening. She was Cinder Fall. She had a destiny. This could not be that destiny, could it? In all fairness, Cinder tried to crawl away. He caught her by a leg and hurled her face first through the double doors, back the way she'd come. Something crunched in her face. BLD spattered. It felt disturbingly like her nose. Her world went black as sleep took her. She struck the street, bounced once, and lay still with a faint groan. Mercifully, she was quite unconscious when someone whipped out a broom and pushed her out of sight. Several scrolls began to CLCK as she was dragged away, persevering the moment forever. Naruto clapped his hands. All done. She won't bother you now. Junior whistled, low and sharp. Holly hell. Holy sit. Melanie hissed. I think I want that. Milsha could only nod numbly. Want that. That was hers. 0, 0, 0, miles away. Yang Zio long sneezed. Why do I get the feeling someone just declared war? Milsha found her voice first. Tell me you recorded that beating. Huh, Melanie crowed. Every diamond bit of it, sis. She'll never work in this town again. Naruto's head whipped left and right as the entire club howled with laughter, heaving from side to side with mirth. He basked in it, not quite comprehending why he was receiving such adulation, only that everyone seemed inordinately pleased with him for reasons he didn't understand. Even after all these years, centuries spent asleep, it still felt pretty damn good to hear people cheer him on. Now if he could just figure out why. Don't look at me. Humans are weird. He scratched the back of his head. Too much? Not at all. Melanie couldn't stop laughing. That was priceless. Milsha doubled over, whipping a tear from her eye. How did you even do that? Was that a rhetorical question? Well, it was pretty simple. She wasn't that strong really MMPH. Melanie dragged him in for a wild embrace that turned his thoughts to pudding. Her tongue tangled with his for all of a moment. His brain fizzled. Not that strong. She pulled back with a cross look, tried to shake him by the shoulders, realized she wasn't tall enough, and settled for his arms instead. She cleaned our clocks when we stood up to her. But you, him what? She dragged his head down and welded her lips to his yet again, stealing his breath away. You got that beach good. Tell me how you did it. Biwa, he says. Melita rolled her eyes as she guided him down into a chair and plonked down into his lap. I think you broke him. Ain't nothing wrong with that, I'll say. Junior clapped him on the back, his chin, looking on with a smirk of his own. Might have been a mistake to leave her alive, though. His gaze FLC back to the doors, lingering. I could have someone finish what you started just like that. His pleasant high came to an abrupt end. Why were they answering to him? No, he bit off the word. I think you're making a mistake, kid. Something hardened in Naruto's heart at those words. The last of his mirth drained out of him. It was so easy to end a life. Too easy. Maybe it would have been better in the long run to simply kill that woman. Maybe not. Who could say? Not him. He believed in second chances. Whomever that Cinder woman was, she'd learn from this. Hopefully it would help her become a better person. Kurama disagreed. I would have eaten her. No, he repeated. Let her go. She's learned her lesson. If she hasn't, I'll deal with her. You sure? You know what they say? Junior slid a drink his way. The only good enemy is a dead enemy. Nope. He fumbled for it, knocked it back and smacked his lips with an audible pop, cutting the gangster short. Not true. Why, it means no, Naruto chirruped, slamming his now empty glass upon the table. Try it sometime. What I'm saying is, out of everyone I fought, most of them ended up being my friend by the end. Technically true. After all, Madara and Kaguya didn't count. They'd been too batshit crazy by the end. 9 times out of 10 a good beating or a good talking set most people to rights. Usually both. Who knows, she might be a friend someday. Junior glanced back at the doors. Kid, that's a pretty twisted idea of friendship. Hey, that's the first time I used 1,000 years of death on anyone. Cut me some slack. And besides, here his brow furrowed, if I went by your logic, the 3 of you would already be dead. They clammed up. He hadn't meant that as a threat, but they'd mistaken it for one. So many misunderstandings. Fair point, Nilsha muttered. Let's not do that. Naruto offered a self-same smile and a shrug. Really, if he went around killing anyone and everyone who looked at him sideways, the world would be a barren and empty place. He didn't want that. This second life was his to live, and he intended to live it to the fullest while he could. Future or no, he wanted to savor it. Savor it, he says, bullshit I say. You just want to be lazy this time around. Hoy, I've earned a vacation. In any case, Melanie shooed her sister off his lap. You might want to get out of here for a bit. Why? Naruto sulked. You're kicking me out. Why? As though to answer that very question, part of the ceiling, the very portion he'd slammed Cinder into, came crashing down. Naruto winced, then flinched again when a wall crumbled. All right, he could repair that. And oh, there went another wall. And a bit more of the ceiling. Melanie planted a hand on her hip. We've got some cleaning to do. Go take a walk. With a put-upon sigh, the last shinobi dragged himself from the chair. Oh, Cinderfall lay in the gutter, her pride in tatters. Each breath served as a sullen reminder of just how badly she'd been beaten, of how she had been broken. This wasn't over. It wasn't as if she'd enjoyed being dominated. Had she? And no, certainly not. Why did she have the strangest feeling she was forgetting something? 0, 0, 0. Neo bounced in place. Actually bounced, as in hopped up and down like some crazy kangaroo. Roman quirked a brow at her. He'd never seen the like before. All right, I'll bite. What's gotten into you? She shoved the picture at him. Or rather, her scroll. Roman took it from her hands and blinked at it. Once, twice, thrice, something from Junior. Why would that crafty BSTRD bother to send him anything? And what was that message tagged there at the bottom? Watch this. Well, that wasn't ominous at all. As luck would have it, this wasn't a picture, but a video. He pressed play, wincing a little at the choppy footage that followed the massacre that came with it, and its unfortunate dark-haired star. His cigar fell from parted lips to clatter harmlessly to the floor. He scrubbed at his eyes with the back of a hand, unable to believe what he was seeing. Look again. His brain gave a cry. They can't be real. We are, said his eyes. It is. And he laughed. Just like that, the day was his. Laughter staggered out of the door after Naruto as he slipped out onto the sidewalk. He couldn't help but chuckle at it. Admittedly, he found himself at something of a loss. Where should he go? What should he do? Find a place to stay, perhaps. What was that saying? The world was his oyster. Something along those lines. He could go anywhere, do whatever he wanted, see the sights, savor the sounds. With what money? Kurama chimed. No, pretty sure you're stuck in the club for now. DMN you in your sense. It's what I do. In the end, he simply let his feet carry him. The streets of Vale were heaving with life, veritable rivers of people on the sidewalks and crossways besides. Her streets were clean yet even, lending his gait a spring in his step. He took a moment to admire the view as he went about his business, all the while trying not to gawk at the looming stone and brick edifices around him. Strange metal boxes whisked by on the road, fascinating hum further. So many houses, buildings, 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 as far as the eye could see. Amazing. It put his village to shame, even if only in sheer quantity. He spied misty spires in the distance and recalled Young's words. That must be Beacon. His mind contemplated wandering that way for a moment before he thought better of it. No, not interested. Maybe this really wouldn't be so bad after all. He missed a step as something or perhaps someone bounced off his chest. He reached out and caught them by the wrist before he could fall. A startled help greeted him. Whomever they were, they must have been tall, because he ended up headbutting them by accident. He'd been so absorbed in his thoughts that he never once thought to look where he was going until it was too late. Sorry about that. Someone sniffled. It's all right. A pair of rabbit ears caught his eye. He looked down at them. No, her, frowned. Isn't it remarkable that one man can have all the power in the world, and yet the tears of a single faunus can sway his thoughts? Some might say that made Naruto soft. That to take time out of his day, his vacation, simply to address the misery of a single girl made him weak. Someone who claimed to be on vacation certainly shouldn't have concerned themselves with the plight of a single girl. But then again, she wasn't just a girl now, was she? Her name was Velvet. Not a bad name, Naruto thought to himself as the girl finished her tale. Really, it suited her. She must have been at her absolute wit's end at that, because once he got her sat down on a park bench, she was perfectly willing to tell him her woes. Velvet told him everything, all of it, every bit. To him, a perfect stranger. Moreover, she'd accidentally named the cause of her woes. Kurama jabbed him. You really are too trusting. She's more dangerous than she looks. Hey, be nice. She's clearly had a bad day. Since when did you get so snarky? Can't help it. I'm a fox, she's a rabbit. Be mindful. He found it strong to believe Velvet had some steel under all those tears, but if Kurama said she did, then certainly did. His gaze fell seeked over her for a moment, idly noting lean muscles, the faint calluses on her hands, the balanced way she sat, ready to spring upright at a moment's notice. Neat. Maybe not so defenseless after all. But she was looking at him now with those great big eyes in hers, and he must attend. So, he scowled, this guy that's been bothering ya. His name's Cardin Winchester. Velvet's long ears drooped atop her head. Yes. He's been bothering me for at least a week now. And this guy goes to Beacon with ya. A knot of anger coiled in his stomach. You said you're a year above him. Why not fight back? It's complicated. She kicked one foot against the ground. If I stand up to him, he'll just pick on someone even weaker. They might not be able to fight back. Naruto snorted. That's no reason to suffer. Even so, it's my choices. It's just, she sniffled a little, difficult sometimes. There were so many ways he could handle this Winchester fellow. Naruto knew many, a number of which involved murder. Appealing, gratuitous, bloody red murder. Reluctantly, he decided against that. Death was final. You didn't learn from death. Well, unless you were resurrected, but he very much doubted that was a thing this far in the future. No, he decided, Cardin Winchester deserved a full course of misery, and maybe 1,000 years of death besides. And so he made a plan. Tell me what he looks like. Velvet leaned back a little. Why? No reason. His smile was all teeth. It's not like I want to talk to him or anything. Loudly, repeatedly, with my fists. Naruto, no. Naruto, yes. He grabbed her by the shoulders, trapping her before she could bolt. Tell me about him. And his friends. Spare no detail. And then Velvet capitulated. Surprisingly, she had a photographic memory. Just as before, she spilled the beans. She even had a picture of him on her scroll, one she'd no doubt been forced to take as he yanked on her ears. Real burly fellow, this Cardin Winchester. Naruto disliked him at first sight. His teammates didn't make a favorable impression, either. All right, Velvet. He released her, still smiling fit to kill. I'm going to solve your little bully problem. She wrinkled her nose. I already told you, just shut up and accept my goodwill. EFLC hit her forehead, cutting her short. When I'm done with him, he'll never bully anyone ever again. Her brow furrowed at that, not quite liking his tone. You're not going to kill him, are you? Nope. He thumped a fist against his chest. Scout's honor. I won't kill him. One ear drooped. Or maybe him. He'll be able to walk. Mostly. She swatted his arm. I take it back. Kurama chortled softly. This girl's quick on the uptake once you get her to open up. She'll do. Do for what? He didn't much understand what his partner was after. In the end, he chose not to ask after it. Ignorance was bliss after all. You're really going to do this, aren't you? Velvet looked away, wringing her hands. I don't suppose there's anything I can say to change your mind. Not a chance. Nothing could sway him now. Nope. But why? We barely know one another. Well, you know my name, don't you? He countered. Those doe-like eyes blinked once, not quite comprehending. Yes, and I know yours. He patted her head, careful not to hurt her ears. That makes us friends. As fellow faunus. No idea what one of those was. Maybe it was a nickname or something. Sure, let's go with that. Heh. A tiny giggle escaped Velvet as the ghost of a smile touched her face. You have a strange definition of friendship, Naruto. What can I say? He shrugged. I like helping people. Although, and it was true, so was what followed. I hate bullies. Meep. Her ears stood ramrod straight. Perhaps if Naruto could see his reflection in that moment, he would have realized just how terrible he appeared to those who crossed him. But he didn't. He didn't even notice when his carefully crafted transformation slipped a little, giving her a glimpse of his pale skin and the truth-seeking orbs manifesting at his back. As such, he found himself somewhat surprised when Velvet held her scroll out to him. H here, she stammered out, lips framing a tremulous smile. You can have my number. Let me know how it goes. He winced. I, really don't have one of those. A scroll, I mean. Velvet tilted her head, misunderstanding. Did yours break? Roll with it. Hadn't Junior said something about getting him a burner scroll? Whatever the heck a burner was. The future was weird. Here, I think I've got a pen and paper on me. When he didn't answer, she fumbled in her pouch for just that and scribbled something down, only to hesitate. Her eyes flitted over his shoulder, tracking the truth-seeking orbs there, the same orbs he had accidentally summoned when his temper reared its ugly head. Those spheres. Would you mind if I took a picture of them? Hey, these things. He used a truth-seeking orb to form his staff once more. Sure, why not? Thank you. Velvet's grin was brighter than sunshine itself. It made him want to protect that smile. 0, 0, 0. So that's the long and short of it. I was, understandably, rather cross with him. You want a ray beacon? Of all the boneheaded ideas. No, no, no. Naruto leaned back in his chair and held up a finger to stifle Junior's protest. I'm going to infiltrate Beacon. There's a difference. EFLC had 2 fingers, to which Hai passed him another shot glass. Strange thought it might be, he was beginning to develop a taste for whiskey. I'm letting you know as a courtesy, he knocked it back, grimacing as it burned his throat. So you don't wonder where I am tonight. All this over some blasted bunny. Milsha scoffed. I don't get it. You had to be there. Naruto caught another glass and downed that as well. She was a pure soul. Melanie crossed her arms, either unwilling or unable to let him wriggle out of this. You're seriously going to attend Beacon? For her. Naruto nearly choked on his drink. What? Now it was his turn to recoil. No, what gave you that idea? He said infiltrate. Melanie raised a finger and jabbed his chest. That implies a long stay or going undercover at the very least. It's only for a night. He flung up his arms before she could continue to play devil's advocate. And for a prank, no less. I've spent one lifetime in school already, I ain't about to do it again. Honestly, Beacon had nothing to teach him, nothing he wanted to learn at any rate. He'd been given a second chance at life after sealing himself away for so long. The way he saw it, this was just a spot of work. Yeah, he liked the sound of that. Just a brief little jaunt to stretch his legs. Nothing more, nothing less. The Winchesters are a powerful family. High's voice tugged him back to reality, spurring him to look up. They have connections. If you mess with one of them, a crime family. I'm quaking in my non-existent boots. Milsha nudged Naruto before he could respond, drawing his attention to her once more. Want us to come with? You're pretty tough, but that's hell you're walking into. Melanie took hold of his other arm. Might as well have some backup, eh? It was tempting. Very tempting. They'd make for useful distractions at the very least. Until they were seen. Now, Naruto might be a bit out of touch, but he was still fairly certain breaking into a school counted as a crime. If either of the twins were caught on campus, Hai would be implicated. Police would descend upon the club en masse. Everything would be searched from top to bottom. He might even lose his bar license. That was no way to repay the hospitality he'd been given. But a lone shinobi, a veritable MSTR of disguise who could change his appearance at the drop of a hat. Well, no one would know what to make of that. In the end, the Jinchuriki chose the road less traveled. Are either of you particularly stealthy? Melanie opened her mouth to protest, and closed it. Milsha mirrored her sister. Junior snorted. Elephants are more subtle than these two. Melanie kicked his ankle. Jerk, we can be quiet when we want to be. Well, that decided things, didn't it? No, Naruto shook his head at the last. This is something I need to do myself. I'll be back by morning. They sulked a little. He couldn't help but feel guilty at that. It's not like I'm running away. On a whim he reached in with both arms and pulled them into a crushing hug. Like I said, I'll be back. Melanie embraced his cheek. You'd better be. Milsha was less subtle, hand trailing across his chest. Morning, got it. You'd better be back by sunrise or we'll come looking for you. Naruto restrained a small smile. He very much doubted either of them were strong enough to go toe-to-toe with a proper huntress, but he appreciated the sentiment. Maybe these two weren't so bad after all. They had spirit if nothing else. Nothing wrong with a little fire in your belly. You're actually serious. Junior set another bottle down. Why do this? It's nothing special, really. He pulled away with a scowl. This punk made my new friend cry, so he's gotta pay. Oh, Melanie and Milsha exchanged a bemused between themselves. Oi, Naruto saw it and scowled. What's that look for? I can't do something nice. Whenever you say boss. Here. I handed him a black, rectangular device. The scroll I promised you. I pulled a few strings. Try not to break it. Naruto held it away from himself as one might an explosive. He turned it over in his hands. Upside down, now. His finger brushed a button and the screen flashed to life, filling his vision with a sea of symbols and odd little widgets he couldn't comprehend. What manner of jutsu was this? Pleading eyes turned upon Melanie and Milsha. I have no idea how to use this thing. The twins sighed in unison. Give it here. You disappoint me, Cinder. I thought you were strong. Those words doomed her. DM in her thrice. Cinder kept her gaze fixed on the floor. My queen, if you'd let me explain, there is nothing to explain, save your failure. Salem frowned through the seer. If you cannot handle one interloper, perhaps you're not worthy to be the maiden after all. Even now she could feel the full weight of the Dark Queen's gaze upon her. It pressed down like a physical presence, the manifest displeasure of a disappointed parent. She wasn't even in this room, not in the physical sense of the word, yet her ire threatened to choke the very life from Cinder's lungs. She could only glare at the floor and pray it would pass. Do not fail me in this. The seer fell silent with a dull rasp. The moment it did, Cinder smashed a fist into the floor. Golden eyes burned with frustrated tears. DM him. Naruto Uzumaki wasn't a particularly vengeful individual. At the end of the day, he'd much rather talk his foes down, reason with an adversary, you know. He'd done so many a time before, and likely would hence. His heart was slow to anger, reluctant to wrath, but once roused, his fury was nothing short of legendary. Just ask any of his enemies. You see, there's some things you just didn't do. Taking candy from a baby. Come on, that was just mean. Bullying a bunny. Not a good idea. Really, it wasn't. PSS off a prankster. Death wish. That said, Beacon's security was surprisingly lax for a hunter academy. No one noticed a masked man in dark garments walking up the rugged cliffs of the Emerald Forest the dead of night. None challenged this cloaked individual as he slipped into the campus proper, wrenched open a door, and ghosted down the halls. Not a soul could see his face, for there was no face to see. His whiskered visage was hidden behind a facade of swirling orange ceramic, his hair likewise tucked deep into the cowl of his cloak, all but denying any chance of proper identification. And if he whistled to himself a little while he worked, well, no one noticed. He went about his work, slapping seals here and there in the halls, concealing some with judicious applications of chakra, leaving others to be seen. After all, better for them to find the fakes than to discover the real ones. Was this how Obito felt when he pretended to be Tobai? Making mischief was rather fun. More than once he saw a camera. Those he disabled one by one, careful to remain unseen. No guards appeared to challenge his sabotage. No alarms wailed, no traps were triggered, no voices raised. Naruto went about his work utterly unmolested. This was the place Young had spoken so highly of. These were the future protectors of this world. It was almost sad, really. HRM and PH. The world used to be a bigger place, with bigger people. The world's still the same, Kurama. Naruto murmured mentally as he disabled another camera. There's just less in it, and these brats are supposed to protect it. I'm starting to fear for the safety of this world. Now, that's not our problem. Harden wasn't strong defined by that regard. Even in sleep he burned with negative thoughts, making him a veritable beacon amongst. Well, beacon. Naruto held back a tiny chuckle as he skirted another camera. Maybe there's something to these puns after all. That was a horrible joke and he should feel bad. Young would like it. He sulked, which goes to show how bad it is. Mustn't laugh. He'd give himself away. He found Team CRDL's dorm in short order. It was there that he encountered his first real form of resistance. The door was fitted with an electronic lock of some sort, impossible to pick. Unfortunately, the same couldn't be said for the handle. A quick twist broke the latch and gained him entry. From there he slipped inside and sealed the door behind him. Ugh, he immediately pinched his nose. Reeks in here. The first thing that hit him was the smell. Harden's dorm smelled exactly like what one would expect of a small room populated by 4 teenage boys. Sweaty socks and dirty laundry. Lots of it. MSTR his rising gorge. He spied 4 beds within, one to each corner in the gloom, visible in the waning light of the shattered room. Each held a sleeping student within. A perfunctory glance confirmed the identities of his soon-to-be victims. Naruto bit his lip and crept closer, stifling a snicker as he did. Even then his shoulders quivered in quiet mirth. This was going to be glorious. He had deliberated long and strong on CRDL's fate. Some ideas were too small, others too grand. Still more would paint Velvet in a bad light. In the end, he'd hit upon a brilliant idea. Sometimes the best pranks were the simplest ones. He began with a simple silencing jutsu, one every shinobi learned to muffle noise. His expanded yet further, a faint shimmer of blur light brimming outward from his body. It coated the walls, floor, and ceiling, saturating the room with cloying pressure. A faint pop in his ears confirmed the jutsu's activation. He'd still be able to hear just fine, but so long as the jutsu remained, every aspect of sound would be muted to those without. From there he stowed his mask and cloak, then crossed his fingers. 3 silent plumes of smoke answered him as 3 shadow clones were born. He waved them to the beds. At the end of the day, Naruto was still a ninja. He might be brash and loud, but his training remained. Next he placed his hands together, fingers and palms firmly pressed to one another. From there he pulled them apart again, creating golden glowing lengths of heavily barbed chakra chains between him. The irony wasn't lost on him. This was Kushina's jutsu, his birthright, only unlocked once Kurama had ascended to 10 tails and empowered him yet further. He really didn't use them as often as he should. Now he was using them for a prank. He wondered if Mom would approve. With a grim chuckle, he passed a bit of the chain to each of his clones, then more still after he considered the sheer strength the hunter possessed. The chances of these 4 being even remotely close to Young's strength were minute at best, but it paid to err on the side of caution. He wasn't taking any chances. Better safe than sorry. Each of them went about their task without fail. First, they placed each boy under a heavy genjutsu to keep them asleep until they were ready. Nothing would wake them now unless he willed it. Then the chains came back out with intent. One by one, the boys of CRDL were bound. Their arms, legs, even their eyes and mouths. All save Carden, who was spared both the BLNDFLD and the GG. He could have done him the same as he did the others, yet he chose not to. You see, it wasn't enough to simply scare Carden and his boys. Velvet was right. Once he realized she was no base bunny to be pushed around, he'd move on to another victim. And so the cycle would repeat. Unless one were to pull it out at the root. He needed to terrify them. Put on an act so convincing, so frightful, that Carden wouldn't even think of harming Velvet or anyone else. This way nobody got hurt, poor Velvet got some peace, and everyone was happy. Well, everyone save Team CRDL. They wouldn't be happy at all after tonight. But really, they were throwaway characters. Screw him. Their task complete, his clones saluted once and dispelled themselves. Naruto did the same and formed a different seal with his hands. Not for more clones, but something else entirely. To think, this had once been his weakest jutsu as a genin. Now, he could do all sorts of fascinating things with enough time and chakra control. He did plenty of the both before he sealed himself away. Right, then, he muttered to himself, here we go. A silent plume of smoke heralded the jutsu, wafting out the window with nary a sound. Had anyone been awake to witness it, they would have been quite confused, for a bemused bunny stood in his place. To the untrained eye, Naruto Uzumaki looked exactly like Velvet Scarlatina, yet there were subtle differences. His stance was all wrong, his balance off, and the light in his eyes just a little too bright to be natural. It wasn't perfect by any means or measure, but it would do. Smiling in a way Velvet Scarlatina never would, Naruto bounced once in place, then pivoted to face his prey. He immediately grimaced, rubbing one shoulder and grimaced at the added weight there. "Ack, my back," he swore. His voice was soft now, for it wasn't his own. He'd been quite thorough. "How do girls live with these things? You're the one who wanted to do this. Deal with it." Carden snorted in his sleep. Velvet scowled. "Think that's funny, do you? Let's see how you like this." A snap of his fingers dispelled the Jinjutsu. One by one, the boys of CRDL began to stir. Naruto didn't give them a chance to. He reared back and gave Carden a good strong smack across the face. The bully jerked awake with a gasp. To be fair, he had good instincts. His body reacted immediately and thrashed against his chains with a grunt, muscles straining, back arching, to no avail. One does not simply break shackles forged by the 10 tails. Carden gave a fair attempt. For a rookie, face red, chest heaving, he finally subsided, if only for a moment. Wide, furious eyes glared up at him. Naruto quirked a brow through the disguise. "Are you done? Are you done?" Red. Carden's world was red, filled with frothing fury. He wanted to reach out and throttle the woman looming over him. Instead he struggled and strained against the shackles like a helpless animal, unable to do anything but flail. His arms failed him. His legs failed him. Here at last, even his breath failed him, leaving him to slump back to the bed, puffing furiously. That Diamond Bunny Beach. He'd get her for this. "How did you get in here?" Velvet wagged a finger at him. "That's for me to know. You think you can make a fool of me? In my own dorm." Spittle flecked at his lips as he raged at her. "You're dead, Bunny. Dead." She tilted her head. "Am I? No, I don't feel dead." There was something wrong with her smile. It was sharper somehow. Not at all like the weakling he knew. Had he been in right mind, Carden might have noticed it. But right now he wasn't in his right mind. Anger clouded his judgment, wrath rode him down, craving revenge. He didn't even stop to consider why she might be doing this, that this might actually be his fault. Nope, not once. As far as he was concerned, he was the wrong party here. Not here. He was Carden Winchester of the Winchester family. He was powerful. He had connections. His father was a legend. Now, then, Velvet leaned down, eyes burning in the moonlight. There was a knife in her hand. Where to start? Oh, yes, she could. "I think I'll start with your ears. After all, you seem so fond of mine." Carden recoiled. "Or maybe not the ears," she hummed. "Perhaps we should start with your tongue. You don't mind, do you?" Panic mounted as realization dawned. "Dove, Russell," Carden cried. "Sky, get this beach." Muffled cries came from their bunks. Bound shapes thrashed there, to no avail. Craning his neck, Carden saw the fate of his team. Bound and gagged, they wailed in terror. "Gee guys," Velvet beamed at him, eyes gone half-lidded WTH glee. "Doesn't feel so good, does it? To be the bullied, rather than the bully." Carden spat in her face, cutting her short. "Wait till I get out of this," he thrashed mightily. "You'll rue the day you were born." A spark of anger slipped through Velvet's smile. "See, this is why I hate bullies." She wiped it away with a sigh, considering him like a giant Mighty ant. "No originality. You're the worst. I was trying to do a bit there. But Nuo." Velvet's hand cracked across slap, snapped his head to the right. "Can't." Carden gagged as heel palm smashed into his chin. "You." A rousing roundhouse sent teeth whistling through the air. "Just." He choked as his nose broke, retching on BLD. "Play." Her fist closed around his hair and yanked him into a headbutt, badly bruising his right eye. Alonged, Carden lay there, wasted and gasping for air, struggling to breathe through his ruined mouth. Oh gods, his trousers were wet. He'd soiled himself. A dying spark of pride had him trying to rise again, only for a taut fist to slam into his windpipe, taking the last of his air from him. You're not her." He wheezed, trying to crawl away in his cot. "You can't be. You can't." "Oh, but I am. I don't want to see you again, Carden." She reached down, squeezing his ruined face and hand. "I don't even want to so much as perceive you." Her forehead embraced his, eyes bright as sapphire gemstones, a ghastly burning that threatened to swallow his soul. "If you breathe a word of this to anyone, if I see you bullying anyone else, I'll break your legs. Do you understand?" He nodded. And Carden. Here at last she paused, scowling down at him like the bloody bunny she was. "If I can get to you in your own dorm, I can get to you anywhere. Remember that." She touched a hand to his forehead and sleep took him. His mind bleated as he slipped back into the black. Never again. He'd never go near her again. Not her or another faunus. And never. Might have overdone it a little. Naruto dispelled the transformation jutsu and considered his handiwork. Carden was too proud to admit he'd been thrashed by a girl. Even if he wasn't, the terror he'd instilled tonight wouldn't be so easily forgotten. Still, he'd managed to hold back for the most part. Carden had only lost a few teeth. That was a good thing, wasn't it? Naruto donned his mask, wrapped himself in his cloak once more, and made for the window. He paused at the edge, considered Carden's prone form for a moment. Then he started taking pictures. It was a decidedly chipper Naruto that greeted the dawn. And why shouldn't he be? He'd befriended a bunny, beaten a bully, and bested the finest bulwark Beacon had to offer with none the wiser as to his excursion. All was right with the world. Better yet, after a bit of prodding, turns out the club actually did serve ramen in a pinch. Ergo, ramen for breakfast. Life was good. Say what you would about Hai, but he was a mean cook when it came down to it. He didn't know where he'd run off to when he wasn't looking, something about taking a call. But the small feast he'd made him was more than equal to the task of distracting him. Someone's in a good mood. A familiar weight hit his right hip, jostling him a little as he tucked into another bowl. I take it you had a good night. Seems like it. That was undoubtedly Melanie tucked into his flank, which meant Milsha had just laid claim to his left. The latter peered over at the vast sea of empty bowls spanning the table. Yikes, how many of those are you going to have? Just one more. Naruto tipped the last back, polishing off the last of his broth. There, 10. The twins exchanged a bemused look. What's with you and that number? What can I say? Naruto couldn't help but preen a little as he patted his still flat stomach. This body needs a lot of calories. Comes with being a Jinchuriki. Jin what? That's nowhere enough. Hirama huffed. We haven't eaten in years. I'm still hungry. It'll have to do, for now. He quipped. Don't want to eat Junior out of house and home. His retort proved just as quick. Suyer, don't poke the mob boss. Look, we've got a full day ahead of us. How so? Naruto opened his mouth to answer, and closed it as an epiphany struck him. Fair point. He'd nearly forgotten about their vacation. He was so used to doing something, be it fighting or talking or even worrying for his friends. He wasn't to simply leaning back, taking in the scenery like this. Even now, the idea of taking it easy rankled. Just a little. A small restless part of him longed to be out there on the front lines, helping people, but he didn't even know where to start. He wanted to be a man of peace, but in truth his talents were best suited to combat. There was just one problem. If he ever fought like he meant it, he might well break things. Or people. This might be difficult. It doesn't have to be strong. Melanie got a hold of his arm and tugged him toward a nearby couch. Let us help you. Hey, Milsha laid claim to the other before he could get away. Don't go giving him a massage without me. On a whim, Naruto fished out his scroll and keyed in a number as he walked. Really, he should probably check in on Velvet. She'd be over the moon. How little he knew. Suo, did you hear the news? And news. Velvet looked up from her scroll and desperately tried to suppress the hitch in her voice, to no avail. What news? I don't know any news. Bun, Coco quirked a dark brow behind her shades. I love you, you know that, but you're one jumpy hair right now. So it would appear. Yet Tsuhashi chortled softly, much to her chagrin. She needn't look to know Fox was giving her the same. Gods above, she was jumping at shadows. Right, okay, calm down. She could do this. She was calm. There was nothing to worry about. She was safe and secure in her dorm. Her team suspected nothing. They wouldn't unless she gave them reason to. Her mind was a still pond. Tranquil waters. Like I was saying, about Winchester. Coco's innocent statement hurled a rock through her pond and shattered her concentration. Velvet buried her head into her pillow with a whine. Nuo. Yatsu sighed. I think you broke her, Coco. Their gunner sighed. Looks like it. Velvet tried to raise her head and rally. Really, she did. Once again she sought to deny that tiny squeak even as it gave her away. Instead her nerves betrayed her like a jilted lover and she stifled a hysterical laugh into her pillow. Hear it, Coco said. She'd seen him Carden in the cafeteria. The pictures had come later, spreading out across the web like wildfire. Try as she might, she didn't know how to feel about that. One wanted Carden was a cruel, vicious bully, an absolute menace. On the other, did anyone truly deserve a beating like that? Because it was a beating, make no mistake. She'd seen Winchester, saw the way he cringed away from her like a dog kicked one too many times. He'd even apologized. I'm sorry, please forgive me. Or I helped you heal quickly, but there could be no disguising the injuries he'd suffered. He was missing teeth, for crying out loud. Somehow, she just knew who was responsible for his sorry state. A grinning blonde. And for once, it wasn't Yon. Naruto, she muttered, what did you do? A hand waved before her face. Remnant to Velvet. Anyone home? Her eyes fluttered in a brief blink. I'm here. Did you need something? He's sure. Coco's smile was nothing short of sly as she planted a hand on her hip. Because it looks like you went to La La Land for a bit there. Oh, Velvet knew that look. Daydreaming about a certain someone, are we? No, her denial was quick. Too quick. Yatsu and Fox perked up in their cots, just so. Is that so? Coco's grin grew to sit-eating proportions. Then who's Naruto? Neep. Had she said that aloud? No, certainly not. Had she? No. Deny. She could prove nothing. Coco, really? She flailed a hand to bat her teammate back. I'm just tired. That's all. You must be imagining things. Her scroll chose that moment to vibrate atop her bed. An awful silence pervaded the room. You gonna get that? Velvet yelped and dove on it. Well. Coco's grin was all teeth, the smirk of a predator poised to pounce. Whatever might cause a reaction like that. Or should I say whom? Velvet felt her ears droop. She'd been caught. Yatsu and Fox hadn't budged, hadn't said a word. They didn't have to, they were watching her like hawks. And why was Yatsuhashi sharpening his sword? Frantic for a way out, she turned her eyes to her phone, praying for salvation. She didn't find it there. Wide eyes regarded the simple message within, a mere 2 lines of text, little more. It's done. And then after that, also, hi. I learned how to use a scroll. Velvet's thumb slammed down and deleted the first text before Coco could lean over and see. Even then she felt her heart skip a beat. So much for the benefit of the doubt. He'd really done it. Her thumbs danced across the screen again, sending a flurried series of replies in turn. You did. Where are you? Usual place. His reply was prompt if nothing else. No need to worry about me. Well, that was pointlessly vague. Cheeky blonde. Another text came in strong on the heels of the last. Also, phones are weird. Velvet considered calling him on the carpet, for all the good it would do her. She had no idea where he lived. Maybe that was for the best. Ignorance was bliss. Plausible deniability and all that. Headmaster Ozen seemed content to keep this an internal matter for now, but if the authorities got involved, the less said the better. Don't worry. Yet another message chirped through. It's going to be all right now. He won't hurt you again. Or anyone else. She sent back a hurried thank you. Maybe. See you around. Let me know if anything happens. A faint hint of warmth suffused her cheeks. No. Bad brain. Blackest of betrayals. She barely knew him. And yet he'd show up when she was at her wit's end. Intervened when no one else could. Like a knight in shining armor. She rubbed her legs together and worried her lower lip between her teeth. Wait, a knight implied some definition of goodness, and however she might benefit from this, the fact remained, most wouldn't look kindly on this, let alone view Naruto's deeds as something to be praised. They'd call it an act of cruelty, a heinous crime unjustly perpetrated against an innocent student, even if it was deserved. Coco said something then, but lost in air thoughts. Velvet didn't hear her Cardin had been the worst sort of bully. Even if she'd stood up to him, he would have moved on to the easier prey. Now he wouldn't dare touch a faunus again. Or anyone else for that matter. She'd seen the fear in his eyes firsthand. It spoke to a tiny dark part of her, one she'd buried for so long. Velvet squeezed her scroll a little tighter. Good riddance. Oh ho? She looked up and realized too late that she'd lost herself in her own little world again. Because when she did, Coco had lowered her glasses. Coco and Fox were looming over her, arms folded before their chests. In the end, it was Coco who broke the stalemate. So, she winked. Who the heck is Naruto? Velvet clammed right up and hid her scroll behind her back. Coco remained undeterred despite it all. Say, Fox, she ribbed their often silent ally. Any chance you could trace that call? Yatsuhashi tilted his head. We would need her scroll for that. Easily remedied. Fork over the phone, bun. Velvet made distressed velvet noises. 0, 0, 0. Hai's scowl was nothing short of thunderous. There you are. I take it you're responsible for this. Naruto looked up from where he lay sprawled on the couch. For what? Look at the bloody headline. A newspaper flew the short distance between them and smacked him dead in the face. Well, at least one thing hadn't gone wonky in the future. Then reality caught up with him. Hai must really be cross to smack him like that. Which implied less than pleasant things as to the contents of said paper. Had he made a mistake? Well, Hirama quirked a brow. Don't leave us in suspense. Open it. Reluctantly, the last shinobi did as he was bade. Sure enough, the front page stared back at him in silent condemnation. He felt no such thing. Depicting one battered and bruised Cardin Winchester. Apparently news traveled fairly fast in this day and age. It hadn't even been a fully 24 hours yet. Say what you would about the media, but those buggers moved quick when there was BLD in the water. Still, he failed to see why the humbled scion of the Winchester household had anything to do with him. Nope, not a thing. There was no proof. I see no problems here. Milsha rolled her eyes and sprawled back atop him. Melanie sniggered, utterly at her ease. Nope, looks fine to me. He says it was a training accident. Junior practically spat sparks. Kid sticking to the story. Naruto tipped his given glass back, savoring the sweet tang of orange juice. Accidents happen all the time. Hai struck it from his hand, sending it hurtling across the room. Cut the CRP. His opinion of Junior climbed just a little higher with that outburst. Anyone willing to shout at him after what they'd seen was someone with steel in their spine. Naruto found he rather liked this version of Hai better. One willing to stand up for himself, rather than bend backward to his every whim. Much better, indeed. We both know who did this. Hai jabbed a finger into his chest. What the hell were you thinking? You said it was a prank. So they were being honest now, were they? And it was. He set his glass down and sat up, still half sprawled among the cushions. If it wasn't a prank, he'd be worse off. You beat that poor boy half to death. Nothing poor about him. His good mood evaporated like so much morning mist. He had it coming. You didn't feel the emotions wafting off him. He felt no guilt, no remorse. He thought it was his right to do what he did, and in time, he would have done something much worse. Probably. Melanie embraced his cheek. He seems the sort. All the BLD rushed to Hai's face. Naruto wondered if he might explode. In the end, he didn't. He stalked to the bar, grabbed a bottle, and drank straight from the tap. Only then did he trust himself to speak. I told you not to do this. When he finally spoke, he sounded almost defeated. I begged you not to. The bottle thunked down on the table opposite him. His family has connections to the underworld, both here and in Mistral. Words already reverberated through Beacon. It won't be long until they hear of this. Couldn't you at least have healed them after the fact? Milsha tilted her head. Wouldn't it defeat the purpose, though? Naruto lifted his chin in agreement, feeling churlish. Sometimes you had to be cruel to be kind. He hadn't healed Cardin back then for a reason, just as he wouldn't return and do it now. The very moment he did, the big buffoon might be even more of a brute and think he'd dreamed all this up. And then where would they be? Who was he to get off scot-free? Perhaps that was cold of him. No, it definitely was. But he'd lost his mercy for bullies long ago. He was still himself, of course. He just held less patience for certain things. It was the duty of the strong to protect the weak, not bully them. Harden was no Madara to be sure, but he had the makings of one. Self-assured, arrogant, thinking himself untouchable. No, maybe that was an insult to the old Uchiha. At least Madara had a reason for what he did. Harden was just a DCK. But Hai was looking to him and he must attend. Do the names Sam and Dean Winchester ring a bell? Naruto CCK'd his head to one side and squinted like a fox. No, Milsha swore softly into his shoulder. PSS. Forgot about those two BSDRD. Right, not from this world. Junior muffled a groan behind his palm. Basically, they're dangerous. Real dangerous. Hunters who hunt just about anything. He opened his hand and clenched it into a claw. People included. And you just hurt a member of their family. How do you think they'll respond? Naruto blinked. Once, twice, thrice. Did I just accidentally a war? Not just any war. Junior waved the paper at him. A gang war. If word gets out and they decide to come knocking. Here at last, he felt a little chagrined. Oops, look here, pal, you may be strong, but me and the girls ain't, to say nothing of the gang. His brow furrowed. Then at high time someone changed that. He felt Melanie tug on his arm. You can say that all you like, but we're nowhere near huntsman level. Milsha plonked down in his lap. Hell, you and Blondie swatted us aside like children. Boy, he wriggled his legs. Off the lap. Why? She ground her rear against his groin. Am I making you uncomfortable? Damn it. He had been happily ignorant when it came to the Pharisec, much less the pleasures of the flesh. Now that he knew them, he found them rather enjoyable. In a moment he was keenly aware of what Milsha and Melanie were doing to him. Bloody succubi. Oi, a giant paw batted him upside the head in the seal. Don't go acting like you're whipped. You're not. I won't stand for that. Fair enough. You keep talking to yourself. He came back to himself to find Hai frowning at him. You hit your head or something? Not really. Naruto couldn't quite keep the smile from his face. Two could play this game. On a whim, Naruto leaned forward and laid an embrace on the back of Milsha's neck, then he blew air into her ear for good measure. She yelped and crashed to the floor, allowing him to stand. He did so with a small, sly smile. It tugged at his cheeks, eyes squinting a little as he rose to his full towering height. That's right. You haven't met him yet, have you? Maybe I should show you why I'm so calm about this. Melanie's long lashes fluttered in a quick blink. Met who? It's just you in here. Kurama. Right on cue his partner came roaring out. A true transformation was neither necessary nor needed here. Worse, it would have brought the club down on their heads. He'd repaired this place more times than he cared to count. In the end, both Boy and Biju settled for a happy compromise. Nothing simpler. And really, it was worth it, if only for their reactions. Melanie yelped. What in blazes? Priceless. Only natural. Really? A giant golden fox head had just surrounded him, engulfing him in transparent golden light. Anyone with half a braid cell would have panicked at such a sight. That Hai and the twins hadn't fainted yet did no small credit. Most would have run away screaming by now. The hell is that? Melita thrashed her way upright, nearly spitting nails. You look like some kind of golden Grimm or something. Kurama snarled, outrage not entirely feigned. You dare compare me with such lowly creatures? Hai went pale. Oh gods, it talks. Naruto rolled with it. May I present Kurama, former the nine-tailed fox, now 10 tails, my partner and best friend. Alright, maybe he was laying it on a little too thick here, just as his smile was a touch too smug. But just couldn't help himself at this point. He was proud of him, of how far they'd come together. HRRMPH. Didn't have to say it out loud. Melanie dared to lean forward and poke a finger into the light. Her finger prodded her stomach. So he lives in you or something? Naruto hummed. Pretty much. If you think this is wild, wait till you see MSDR Barian mode. The hell's a Barian mode? Well, we were asleep for centuries, and we had a lot of time on our hands. The doors crashed open, cutting him well short. Kurama fizzled away, retreating back into the seal. Just as well, because all hell broke loose. Hai groaned. Now what? An unfamiliar voice crowed behind him. See, piece of cake. Told you we could trace it. Hey? Naruto whirled and beheld a familiar pair of rabbit ears. Hey, Velvet. I took care of your bully problem oomph. Velvet hit him at speed. Her head crashed into his chest and her arms locked tight, hugging him fiercely. She mumbled something but the words were lost against the fabric of his shirt. At first he didn't understand. Then she started to sniffle. Naruto felt a strange heat bloom in his face. So I guess you're happy to see me again. Melanie and Milsha absolutely bridled at that. Excuse us. Coco swiped Hai's bottle from the table and plonked down on the sofa. Yeah, I think Bun Bun's got a crush on you. Naruto was no stranger to attention, much less the conflict that often followed it. As a boy he'd often striven for the former, ever eager to prove himself to his peers. First came pranks in his village, then missions with his comrades, and finally, saving the world as a whole. He'd been selfish back then, if only because he wanted to be seen, recognized, acknowledged by all those who didn't believe in him. Had things gone according to plan, he may well have settled down someday, started a family, maybe even become the Hokage. So yes, he'd grown rather used to the public eye. But this was too much of a good thing. A blind man could see the hostility in the air, cut the tension with a knife. There they were, Milsha and Melanie on either side of him, Velvet all but wedged against his chest, and him smack dab in the middle. A bemused Coco looked on from the sidelines, sprawled out on a couch, wearing a sit-eating grin that would have put Madara himself to shame. Hi, meanwhile, looked like he was one sharp word from flinging himself out the door. One really couldn't blame him for wanting to call it a day, early though it was. All in all, hardly the way he'd expected his morning to go. And yet he found himself smiling all the same, if only because a small part of him enjoyed being in the spotlight. Even after years of isolation, he just enjoyed being around people, you know. Maybe that made him a social butterfly. Kurama delivered him the mental equivalent of a knock upside the head. You think? Right, the twins were going for their weapons. Time to intervene. Hey, he placed both hands on Velvet's shoulders and gently drew her back. Why are you crying? I fixed your problem. You did. She looked up at him with watery eye. But then you vanished. You didn't even tell me where to find you. Stupid. A weak fist thumped his chest. Unfair. I wanted to thank you in person. When he couldn't bring himself to answer quickly enough, she bowled forward again, buried her face against his jacket. I didn't think I'd ever see you again. Hoko had to track your phone just for me to find you. Oh. Hey, wait. Naruto cast a frantic glance at Melanie and Milsha. He found no sympathy there. He tracked my phone. That's a thing. She can do that. Hoko lowered her shades to stare at him. Technologically inept, much. This from the girl who helped her hunt me down. Hoko whistled innocently. Right, maybe he should get Junior to upgrade his phone again. Didn't much like the idea of someone being able to hunt him down. It was too much to hope the twins wouldn't pounce on that. Milsha took the initiative and stomped forward. How in the hell do you know him? Velvet flinched. He helped me. With a bully problem. Bully? Melanie caught on first. That was you. Her eyes narrowed, noting her uniform at last. SHD. You're both from Beacon, aren't you? You're huntresses. In training. Hoko called from the couch. Velvet stamped a foot. Coco, sorry, truth hurts. Bartender. The brunette seized the day and waved her empty glass. Pour me another. Junior made a noise like grinding glass and pulled out a trio of green bottles. He hurled the smallest at her. The gunner caught it, uncorked her prize, and knocked it back with a hearty sigh. The reprieve bought Velvet a chance to disengage. She finally took her gaze from him and looked around, taking in her surroundings for the first time. Wide eyes regarded the club, truly noticing it. You work here. Naruto shrugged. More or less. Melanie and Milsha rolled their eyes. Definitely more. He could have contested that, but he didn't feel the need. It wasn't as if Velvet would believe the truth. He'd had to pull out Kurama just to convince Hai and the twins. Doing so scared them half to death, and he didn't want the same for the poor bunny, much less this Coco girl. Better they think him a good Samaritan rather than a god reborn. What was the saying? Ignorance was bliss. Yep, that was the one. He didn't much feel like shouting his identity to the world at large. There would be worship and gifts, though, some of which might be ramen. Tempting weight? No. Don't think about it. Too late. It was in his head. Leave it to Kurama to be the devil on his shoulder, even after their ascension. Who said anything about being a devil? We fought a lot of people to get this divinity. We deserve to be treated as such. Thoughts for Ader. Shoving those thoughts aside, he focused on the task at hand. Namely keeping these three from killing one another. At some point someone must have said something, because Milsha looked like she was contemplating cold BLD murder, and Melanie wasn't far behind. Now if everyone would just put their weapons away. He stepped between the three of them. At a big riot. Melanie and Milsha didn't budge an inch. Velvet reached for a box on her belt. In the background, Coco rose from the couch, gripping her handbag. Naruto sighed explosively. For the love of. Group hug. His right arm flitted out, reeling Velvet against him. Her squeak of surprise went ignored. From there he produced a pair of golden chakra arms and grabbed the twins by the scruff of their necks. In short order they were hoisted into the air as one might a pair of naughty children. A thought yanked them inward. From there he crushed all three of them into his chest, stifling all hopes of protest. Well, more like muffling, really. Hey, damn it, Whiskers. Ouch. Not so tight, blast you. Naruto ignored them wholeheartedly. If life was a balancing act, he thought he was doing a decent job thus far, in that he'd given up balance altogether. In his short time here, he'd done so many things. Quarreled with one student, helped another, accidentally took over a gang, made his fair share of enemies and friends alike. Even nettled himself a place to stay for the foreseeable future. Life goals these were not, but they were all he wanted. Right now from this strange second life of his. He really didn't have a set goal here, and while it helped him to relax, it also left him in a bit of lurch. Adrift, if you would. Even now his conscience nagged at him. He could do so much good. Did he stick around Vale or set out into the wider world? The possibilities were endless. He longed only to explore them. No, wait, he told a lie. He wanted to make as many friends as he possibly could. They'd never replace those he'd known in the past, but still. It was still his choice to make. Stay or go. Friends or exploration. Gods don't have to choose, Naruto. They take. Why have one when you can have both? That actually made sense. Fair words, if a bit misguided. He'd modify them. He was going to take as much as he could from this vacation. So, he beamed. Who wants ice cream? I'm buying. Velvet right ear twitched. What kind? And time marched on. Cinder limped into bed, favoring her good leg. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. He'll see. They'll all see. Taeyongsi seeked his shotgun with all the righteous wrath of a furious father. Someone had harmed his baby girl, his sunny little dragon. Couldn't expect God to do all the work. Salem tilted her head as he reclined in her throne, stewing in her thoughts. She'd sensed it some days ago. A shift, an awakening. She wondered if it would devour Cinder. Regardless, it bore watching. She need not act. Yet, one did not simply become a criminal mastermind overnight. One needed patience, caution, determination, and grit in equal measure. One had to be smart, fast, willing to cut deals and the occasional throat. To survive. Because, you see, Roman Torchwick considered himself a cautious man. He'd clawed his way up from the bottom to the top, seen the worst this world had to offer, and emerged unscathed. He'd even forged a few friends and found himself a partner along the way. He'd made a name for himself, first in Mistral, then Vale. Even Atlas and Vacuo knew his name. Yes, sir, he'd been riding high on fame and fortune, until one Cinderfall brought him crashing low. Oh, how he'd chafed working for that wicked witch, not that he'd had much of a choice. Obey or die. Those were his options. Resistance was futile. At least it had been. Until someone floored her. Literally. Spanked her arse like a little girl, tossed her about, then spread the video all over the internet. That implied strength to be sure, but also a vindictive streak. A velvet glove concealing an iron fist. He'd spoken openly with at her first, then, when negotiations broke down, tanned her hide. Roman was no fool. He knew he wasn't a fifth of the fighter Cinder had been. Fighting that thing was akin to throwing yourself into a hurricane. Thus, he wasn't here to fight. No, sir, not tonight. The doors to the club were much as he remembered, as was the main front itself. Bar a fresh coat of paint and a few cracks in the neon-lit sign, it was every bit as he recalled. High's bouncers were nowhere to be seen for once. Their absence troubled him more than he cared to admit. Even now he could feel the presence lurking behind those doors, a palpable dread that clawed at him like a Beowulf. Maybe that was his semblance acting up again. He'd always been able to detect danger in a way, sense trouble coming before it hit. Fat load of good that did him here. Wonder if All Whiskers remembers the directions I gave him. Definitely, knowing his luck. Junior was probably still PSS to all hell about that. And if things went poorly tonight, he'd stand to lose a great deal more than his friendship with the Kshin clan. Just thinking of it threatened to unman him entirely. Fumbling fingers flailed for a cigar and his lighter as he regarded the door leading to his doom. It took 3 tries before the blasted thing finally sparked. He inhaled deeply, savoring it before exhaling a thin plume of smoke. It settled his nerves slowly but surely, casting a thick veneer of calm over his frayed senses. With a hearty exhale, he took a final pull and dropped it at his feet. Melodic cudgel crunched down, extinguishing it. All right, the word was a rasp. Ready to go, Neo. His partner shrugged. Fearless little thing. Shame he couldn't borrow that. Neo was unpredictable at the best of times, downright volatile at others, especially when she didn't get her ice cream. But he didn't think she had a death wish. Besides, she seemed eager for this. Hopefully she wouldn't get too stab-happy. Anyone capable of taking Cinder out like yesterday's trash wasn't someone he wanted to tango with. He hadn't enjoyed dancing to her tune in the first place. Now she'd gone radio silent, not returning his calls, refusing to so much as speak to him. All he received was silence, and in the silence, he'd begun to wonder. Even now his mind buzzed with questions. Was the plan still on? What was he supposed to do with all that dust? Keep it? Sell it? He had to know. And so he'd come down here at this ungodly hours to make nice with the new. Truth be told, he didn't know what to call the kid. Still, a meet and greet was in order, if only to get his bearings. Wouldn't do to step on any toes now. He wouldn't do something so senselessly stupid. It ranked right up there with attracting a Grimm in the middle of a swarm. Only an idiot would do something like that. Enough stalling. Nothing ventured, nothing gained. Steeling himself, Roman placed both hands against the doors and flung them open. They parted on well-oiled hinges, opening him to the empty expanse beyond. First impressions were key. He wasn't about to crawl in like some dog. Oh, no. If this was to be his last day on Remnant, he was going to make an absolute scene. Junior, I'm home. A bottle whistled at his head. Roman caught it mid-stride and took a moment to admire it as he sauntered toward the bar. He smacked his lips as he appreciated the dark blue glass. Desert flower. Good vintage. Sit your butt down and drink. Junior glared bloody red daggers at him from behind the counter. His old buddy looked more haggard than usual. Small wonder they were closed tonight. Roman complied, sliding onto a bar stool as Neo claimed the closes beside him. The bottle thunked down, glasses came out, and Junior poured. He didn't dare speak again until he'd had his first shot. Tough times. Torchwick, I will slap you. Fine, spoil sport. Can I visit an old friend? Friend. High's smile could have etched glass. You sixed that kid on me. Hardly a friendly thing to do. Here at last, Roman had the good grace to wince. To be fair, he hadn't been aware of what said kid was. It had seemed a fun way to ruffle Junior's feathers and help out a brat down on his luck. 2 nevermore with 1 bullet. Had he known his true nature, he would have told him to take a long walk off a short pier. Right now his semblance was screaming at him, but still he saw neither hide nor hair of their guest. Hey here, upstairs. Junior FLC had a thumb over his shoulder. He's resting. Entertained some Beacon girls today. Took him out on the town. Beacon, sit. The criminal's BLD cooled in his veins. What does he want? That's just it. Junior flung up his arms and tore at his hair. I don't know. It's driving me mad. His forehead embraced the counter with an audible thunk. I need a vacation. Neo deigned to pat his back. It bespoke of Hai's own exhaustion that he didn't bat her hand away. Come on, Roman rallied and poured himself another glass. He can't be that bad. No, a small voice hissed into the back of his head. He could be worse. Junior groaned into the counter. Torchwick sighed. Wanna run that by me again? I said you don't know the half of it. His old friend raised his head. He's the one who snuck into Beacon. In and out. He snapped his fingers, without so much as a whisper. Forget cold. Roman's BLD became so much ice. Neo had perked up in his peripherals. Worse, she was smiling. It was not a nice smile. SHD. That was him, and then some. Hai drank straight from the tap. EFC kept up the Winchester brat. His family's howling for BLD. Still, that doesn't mean things have to change, he tried. He really did. Maybe he was setting an example. Change. Things have changed. Take a look around. Reluctantly, Roman did as he was bade. The first thing he noticed were the men. More than he remembered. Hai had been recruiting. Seemed the Shin clan was moving up in the world. Or down. Strong to tell when it came with gang. This was strictly a two-man operation. Worked better that way. Still, this lot looked capable. For untrained thugs without aura. Oh, it's you. A voice from the stairs sealed his fate. Against his better judgment, Roman turned to face his doom. The kid looked much as he remembered. Cleaner perhaps, and he'd forsaken those ugly orange-on-black rags for a better ensemble. Pale shoes CLC ked across the floor, leading up into white trousers with a splash of red, bearing golden streaks nearly his likewise scarlet vest. Like a fox, or a phoenix, maybe both. He couldn't tell from this angle. Still, white and red. A nod to the twins, no doubt. Cute. His dark gunmetal blue jacket signified what might have been loyalty to the Shin clan or something else entirely. And yikes, didn't Melanie and Milsha just look PSS as all hell to see him? Hey. Despite himself, Roman found himself wishing he had another cigar. Good to see you again. I wasn't aware you'd, taken over. Strangely enough, that irritated him. He saw it in his face as he stalked over. I really haven't, but everyone certainly seems to think so. Was that a confirmation? Against his better judgment, he persisted. So you're the one running Hai's operation. Stubborn BSDRD practically made it my operation, now. Isn't that right, girls? So, Roman, was it? Rather than pull up a seat, Naruto vaulted the bar and leaned over it to face him completely. Melanie and Milsha took up flanking position on either side of him. No escape. Not here. Not now. Not from this. Nope. Naruto's forehead slammed against his. Let's talk. Everything nice. Silence reigned supreme. Kurama scoffed into the dimly lit room. You're actually considering this? Maybe. Naruto thumbed his chin as he considered the scheme written down before him. I started this, and I owe him a debt. His finger ground down against the sheaf of parchment, digging into the desk beneath. If someone comes for Hai and the twins because of what I did to Winchester, they can defend themselves. Against a huntress. His fingernail bit into the desk, worrying at the wood. Against someone like Cinder, or Cardin's family. Young thrashed him, and she's not even a proper huntress. Fair. I still say they're not worthy of chakra. The bunny? Maybe. Possibly the gunner. They've got some spine. But those three? Never. Maybe. His fingers drummed restlessly against the desk, producing a steady cadence. No reason I can't put them through the twins through a little test first. What are you thinking? Bell test. Hathakei's ordeal had merit. See if they betray one another or work together. Better yet a pause as his old friend considered the wager. Let them show their character before that. Maybe then I'll agree to this harebrained scheme. What did you have in mind? Kurama outlined his scheme in no uncertain terms. That's actually a really good idea. Might PSS him off, though. That would be the plan. You see the true measure of a mortal when they're angry. He opened his mouth to reply, and paused. His senses had just lit up. Blue eyes snapped toward the window. Young. Naruto wasn't an easy man to find. In hindsight, Young knew what was her fault as much as his. While her fellow blonde hadn't exactly made himself scarce since their last meeting, he hadn't exactly gone out of the way to advertise his location either. Without a scroll to track him by that she knew of, she'd had to hunt him down in her free time. And hunt him she had. She didn't have to go far. The doors of the club loomed before her now, same as that night. New sign, and a fresh coat of paint perhaps, but little seemed to have changed beyond that. If not for Coco's tip, she never would have tracked him down at all. A pang of bitter irony flooded her mouth, bringing with it an awful taste. Of course he hadn't left. If she'd known that, she would have searched here first. Shame he hadn't gone to Beacon. With skills like that she would have loved to have him on her team. And the embrace. A smug little voice cooed in the back of her head. Don't forget the embrace. Her face burned, as if she could. Sure they'd been tipsy as all hell and holding back she was certain he was, at least, but it had been a fond memory, even if said memory had landed them tin the slammer. A small part of her still wondered what it might have been like. To have him as a teammate, if not a friend. Would have been nice. Still, she was happy with her lot in life now. Long live Team RWBY, slayers of cookies and killers of Grimm. Ruby was coming into her own, the Ice Queen had settled down, and Blake. Well, Blake was Blake. She'd come around sooner or later if she knew what was good for her, and if she didn't, Young would see to that herself. Right now, she just wanted to see all Whiskers again and put this behind her once and for all. She needed to figure things out, see if she still felt the same while she was sober. Else, this would just keep nagging at her, so long as Dad didn't find out. Nope. All the nope. Taeyong was great, really, he was, but he could just be so overprotective sometimes. Not his fault, she knew, after he'd lost Raven, not her mother, never her mother. And Ruby's mom, she could understand his longing to keep them safe. But a shotgun for a boy, really? If he and Naruto ever met? No, best not dwell on that. Yeah, sure, it would be fine. The doors swept open as she reached them, forcing her to step back or risk being run down. An exhausted redhead staggered out, looking absolutely haggard. Turquoise green met hers, rolling in mild dismay. Hey, Blondie. He looked up, set his hat and tugged on his collar to iron the creases out. I wouldn't go in there if I were you. Dread dawned in Young's heart. Why not? Boss is in a bad mood. The man fumbled for a cigar in his coat pocket, then FLCK'd out a lighter. Third time he's dragged me in there this week. Boss, wait. Realization dawned as the man tugged on his bowler cap and finally his a smoke. She recognized that face from the wanted posters, weary though it was. Your Roman Torchwick. Got it in one. So nice to be recognized these days. He waltzed past her. Try not to get killed. Yang nearly deployed Ember Celica and lunged after him. What the hell had she missed? She could chase him down, or have this done. In the end the answer was obvious. Now or never. She braced her hands against the club doors once more and made to push. Just get it over with. If she hesitated any longer, Ruby and the rest would start to worry. Imagine her surprise then when they flung open and bowled her over. Naruto came storming through. Hey, Young. Manic blue orbs met hers, wide and intent. Perfect timing. His hands came down on her shoulders. Go out with me. Young's eyes got really big. Why, hold on. She drew back, spluttering. Wait a second. My heart isn't ready. What do you mean? He squinted at her. I meant out on the town. Come on. Before she could protest, he latched onto her wrist and hauled her off. Will you slow down? What's the hurry? Boy, answer me. Tactical retreat. Might have PSS the twins off. Laughter spilled into the night. Of course you did. Really know how to treat a girl, don't ya? Not really. Another strawberry sunrise slid across the bench into her waiting hand. Just this one. Young snatched it up, made to knock it back in a single gulp, then thought better of it at the last second. Against her better instincts she raised it to her lips and sipped slowly. Savored it. And RSNG her drink gave her time to glance at him out the corner of her eye. Not that it did much good. Blasted butterflies in her stomach wouldn't let her be. She usually didn't give a flying fig about girly stuff. And yet, want another. Screw it. Hit me. She tried not to preen as another drink slid her way and failed miserably. Honestly, if he kept plying her with these, he was going to spoil her rotten. Not that she minded. This felt nice. Now that they'd gotten away from the club, she'd begun to see a different side of him. Strong to believe this was the blonde she'd brawled with only a short while ago. He seemed quiet now, almost contemplative even. Calm as a tranquil lake. Almost made her want to throw a stone through it, just to see that fire again. Feel his hands on her waist, her palms running through his hair. Down, girl. She chastised herself for the slip. This isn't anything serious. Be cool. Everything had been so much easier when they'd been buzzed and brawling. No need to think then. Now, you know, Young hummed softly, when you dragged me away out here, I didn't expect you to take me to a park. Naruto laughed a little and leaned back against the bench. Well, I could hardly take you to another bar. Wouldn't want a repeat of that night, would we? A small part of her wouldn't mind. I dunno, she said instead. Pretty sure I had you on the ropes. He quelled her with a bemused look. Sure, keep telling yourself that. Lively lilac eyes met bemused blue, and much to her chagrin, Young found herself yielding. Frantic, she cast about something anything else to look at. Hardly a proper park this, but she'd take what she could get here in Vale. If he was aiming to get her drunk again, he'd be disappointed. Yang Zhao Long was no pushover, even if Loverboy could conjure drinks from thin air. Still say that ability is bullshit. It really isn't. Naruto held up a palm, inadvertently drawing her gaze back to him, or rather, the blue and red flames blazing within his palm. As she looked on, a glass crystallized above his outstretched fingers, followed by the bright flavorful liquid she so enjoyed. I asked Junior how to make one. He held up the complete concoction and with a FLCK of the wrist, floated it her way. Long as I know what goes into something like this, I can make it. Not so busted, then. She grinned, accepting her offering as it was due. Maybe I'll keep you. He favored with another one of those odd looks of his. That a compliment. Yang leaned forward, intent on making him squirm. Man alive. Naruto seemed nice and all, but she didn't know much about him. Nor he her, come to think of it. Which was precisely why they were here, sounding one another out. A bit of fun was all well and good. Yang didn't much a casual tumble in the air, but there was a part of her that wondered if this could be more than that. If it should, she felt like she could get along with this blonde bugger. He wasn't like those punks back in Signal, and he certainly didn't act like anyone in Beacon. And yet despite all that, she felt like she was missing something. Another side to him. Made her DMN curious, it did. Well, only one way to get her answers. So, she hefted her drink. Dowd, you know this was my favorite. Her fellow blonde chuckled softly. It sent a pleasant shiver shooting down her spine. A friend might have told me her tastes. He crept up the back of her neck. Sit. Well, she had mentioned it before they threw down that night. Gods, that was such a corny line, too. She wouldn't have tolerated it from anyone else. They would have gotten a fit of laughter and a knuckle sandwich besides. How did he make it sound so good? Aorg, her tongue betrayed her then. Treacherous things that it was at least she has good tastes. Does she? Naruto tilted his head a fraction of an inch to the right, and those odd rippling eyes of his had her heart kicking against her chest. Frankly, I don't know what she sees in me. Opportunity knocked. Time to answer. She polished off the last of her glass and set it aside. Why not ask her and find out? She cursed herself for the phrasing almost immediately thereafter. Ugh, even cornier than his line. She wanted a day. All right. Much to her surprise, he took the bait. I already know what your favorite drink is, so how about your favorite pastime? Besides brawling, that is. Yang squirmed a little. Puns. Naruto tilted his head. Didn't quite catch that. Puns, all right. Heat flushed her face as she flung up her arm. I like making bad jokes. Whiskered cheeks dimpled in a roguish grin. Well, as long as you don't make like a tree and leaf on me. Her ears twitched just so. Someone who liked to fight and appreciated her puns. Defcon 1. We have a keeper. A dozen little youngs cried out in the back of her head. We can keep him, right? Tell me we can keep him. Mine. No, not hers. She barely knew him. Oh gods, she felt warm. Thinking straight was a struggle, more than she cared to admit. Damn it, she coughed into a fist. Guess you're more than a smooth talker with a mean right hook. Naruto shrugged. You're not so bad yourself. Good kisser, too. His face burned to match hers. Point for her. Sue. How's Beacon? It's great. Cheeky bugger trying to change the subject like that. Still, the question was honest if nothing else. Got my own team and everything. Wheel. He scratched a whiskered cheek and looked away with a wince. Might have started a gang war. Juicy gossip. She perked up. With who? Anybody I know. A rueful grin. Promise not to tell. Sure thing. She reached out and hooked her pinky finger in his, surprising him. Now spill. I may have had words with someone named Cardin Winchester. He didn't look much pleased to say it. Coco had hinted at much, but to hear it said was something else entirely. She whistled. SHT, that was you. Need some help? Naruto shook his head. Young? No. What's that look for? She jabbed a thumb against her bosom, grinning. Huntress, remember, I'm totally kick-ass. Huntress in training. EFLC at her forehead, drawing a whine from her. And I can handle this, thank you. Duo. She melted into him with a sigh. He didn't try to flee, not even when she looked up at him. What was the harm? It was just a bit of fun. And if it became more than that, she'd keep her options open. But for now, comfort was just what the doctor ordered. She'd said all she was willing to say today. Wait. He held up a hand when she started to lean it. You do realize I'm not human, right? Not a big deal for her. She tugged his arm down. Faunus, then. Mate. His smile was thin. Not quite. Well, there was another mystery for her to unravel. Young liked a guy who kept her guessing. Doesn't much matter one way or the other to me. She waved the fingers of her right hand in an abbreviated gesture. Figured you weren't normal from the moment we met. Also, I saw you first. A quick jab against his chest had him wincing. Embrace it first, too. So I called dibs. I don't think it works that way. He took her remark in stride. Also, hate to break it to you, but someone already nope. Naruto blinked, not used to being cut off. Hey, nope. She reached up and tweaked his nose. Negative. Means no. Oi, don't you start with that. Stop it. She battered her lashes at him. You gonna make me? Those wild blue eyes sparked. Nearly there now. He just needed a good nudge. She'd give him more than that. So what if someone had beaten her to the punch? Young Zeo Long didn't back down from a challenge. Not even one like this. She'd found someone who intrigued her, and she was hardly about to let them go just because some hussy got to him first. In a singularly swift motion, she climbed into his lap, planting her legs on either side of him. He tensed but didn't push her away. You sure about this? Not really. That was why she was doing it in the first place. Words were all well and good, but she was a woman of action. Always had been and always would be. I'm willing to see where this goes. Fair. A blonde brow rose. I'll warn you now, she could barely hear his words over the roaring in her ears. I'm a cuddler. Cute. Her nose brushed his. Yeah, well I snore. Thought I had a problem with that. His mouth curled in a wry grin. Nope. Hey, that's my line. In hindsight, Young wasn't sure who moved first, let alone whom embrace whom, only that one of them must have, because suddenly her mouth was on his and she found herself leaning into him, melting into his embrace as she had once before. Her pulse quickened and she tightened her grip on him, all but fling. How was that? Dunno. Might need another to be sure. Her words drew a low chuckle from him. Pretty. Nope. She grinned. Just Young. Haha, very funny MMPH. This time she was the one to cut him off, pressing her lips against his. She heard him inhale sharply through his nose, felt his hands tighten around her waist, strong enough to bruise. She pushed him back against the bench in turn, ruthlessly plundering his mouth with her tongue. Someone made a noise behind them. Almost sounded like a growl. Naruto growled and blindly flung out a hand. The noise ceased. Meh, probably a raccoon or something. Young ignored the thorn pricking at her conscience and rolled her shoulders with vigor, popping the buttons on her jacket. She arched her back and let the brown fabric slide off to pool at her waist, breasts heaving beneath the thin fabric of her undershirt. His hands ghosted across her bare shoulders to pull her closer still, and her skin sang at his touch. Hey, hey. She batted his hands away when they reached higher. Watch it, Buster. Scarf stays on. Short THNG. His hand still rose, brushing the fabric. Orange is my favorite color. It better be. For some reason that made him laugh, and she found herself joining him, dipping in for another embrace. His arms tightened around her, and she found herself grinding against him. Every bit of that night came rushing back to her. It felt as if they'd picked up right where they'd left and then some. Her palms lashed out, seizing a fistful of his shirt, dragging him down to the grass with her. BLD boiled in her veins, demanding release. Lively lilac eyes flashed red as her semblance flared. See here, you. Her fingers found his jacket and yanked it down, exposing his chest to her wanting eyes. Then they were down again, wrestling one another for DMNC. She came up on top, straddling him for a blessed instant. Then he twisted his body and she found herself on the bottom again, hair sprawled out beneath her like a golden halo, gasping now as he pressed against her. "Eh," she grinned. "Looks like you pinned me. Now what?" Naruto cupped her face again, bent down, and embraced her fiercely. She met him with equal fervor. Something deep and primal stirred within her, blotting out the last of her hesitation. This was what she wanted, what she needed. No need for silly girlish thoughts or blushing, stammering words. Their bodies could do the talking. They weren't stopping this time. She didn't want to be stopped. And then he touched her hair. He actually dared to reach a hand down and run it through her golden mane. If he'd dared to pull it, she would have broken his fingers and kicked him off her then and there. Instead, he touched it gently, running his palm through it as no boy before him had ever done. It was such a little thing. It shouldn't have meant anything. But it did. To Yang, it meant everything. She loved her hair. It was her pride and joy. Naruto was gentle with it as much as her. That won her over more than anything else. She reached up, all but dragging him into her lap completely. Her fists locked around his belt buckle. "Breathe off. Now." A noise behind her stilled her BLD. Well. Someone snarled behind them. "What do we have here?" Naruto snapped to his feet. Yang was only a heartbeat behind, face burning as she all but hid behind him. She wasn't ever, damn it, but she wasn't above punch whoever had just interrupted. CRP. Yang didn't want to look. She did anyway. Taeyang Long stood before them, face dirty, hair crusted with leaves and mud. His hands weren't empty. Naruto swore softly. "Oops, Dad, wait." Yang held up her palms. "I know what this looks like, but just calm down." "So, Daddy dearest, see get his shotgun. So that's him, then." Naruto had the good grace to sigh. "You must be Taeyang. Right on the money. I'm also your executioner." Yang groaned. "Daddy, no. Daddy, yes." Naruto quirked a brow. "You can try." Yang flung up her arms. "Naruto, no." "Hey, Milsha." "What, Melanie? You ever think the boss is messing with us?" They got a reaction out of her twin. She flipped over on their bed with a frown and kicked her feet up, red dress flaring around her legs. Shame. If the boss was here he would have stared, and they could use that as an excuse to jump him. She was itching for another round. Shame he'd run off somewhere. How so? I mean, he said something about a test. She held up one finger, then another as she counted down. Then ran out all of a sudden, 2 fingers now, and he hasn't been back for a while. It's weird, right? Her twin hissed. "Beach, don't talk shit about him. I'll cut you." Hey. No need to bring out the claws. Then don't bring up the heels. Melanie looked down, had she? Oops. She had begun to raise her right leg without realizing it. Fine. Just put your hands down. You have any idea how strong it is to get BLD out of a white dress? Harder than it'll be to hide a black eye. Her twin waved a fist before her face. You get me? Fine. Melania sighed and flopped back onto the bed beside her. From there she placed her chin atop her arms and snuggled back into the blankets. I wasn't trying to talk shit. Just shooting the breeze. You got a funny way of doing that, sis. Hell, Melcher really was loyal to the boss. It was adorable, in a puppy love sort of way, though she'd never tell him that. As for her, she didn't really get Blondie sometimes. Naruto wasn't a killer, or so he claimed, but she'd seen him make Cinder fall wish for death. Wasn't a lover, but damn was he a good lay. He had power, yet he didn't use it like any upstanding criminal would, but still had all the more allies for it. He was a baffling bag of contradictions, and she wanted power like that. Then nobody would ever make fools of them again. She'd show that huntress girl what for. Diamond blonde bimbo. See how she liked it when she was the one getting tossed around. Milsha snapped her fingers. Hey, you're spacing out again. Maybe she was. I mean, what's the worst that could happen? Not like he's getting himself into any trouble. Milsha arched a black brow. You really want to tempt fate, don't ya? They exchanged a long, lingering look between themselves. He definitely is. Naruto, no. Hi. Naruto, yes. Yes indeed. He was hardly about to back down here, not with Young's father in his face. In truth, he'd much rather talk things out, but with the BSTRDC seeking that shotgun of his. Well, that complicated matters. As far as Taeyang Xiaolong was concerned, he was the villain here, not him. Didn't look like talking would work. Still, he wouldn't be Naruto Uzumaki if he didn't make an attempt. Look, he raised a hand, palms open, fingers splayed. Why don't we take a moment to calm down, reset our tempers, you know. Ty's finger tightened on the trigger. Counteroffer. Get the hell away from my daughter and I'll let you live. I think that's for her to decide, don't you? She's old enough to make her own choices. Then are you strong enough to protect her? Young squawked. Oi, both of you. I don't need protecting. Naruto ignored her and met the man glare for glare. Stronger than you, old man. He had no way of knowing, but in that instant, he'd just reminded Young's father of a broody old bird. Right, that tears it. Taeyong bowled into his personal space. One blonde is bad enough. We don't need two blondes blonding it up in here. A finger dug into his vest, seeking the skin beneath. Not when you're acting like her. Blonding. Young scoffed. Hey, I take offense to that. Tai flinched. Young. Honey, I didn't mean you right, she huffed, crossing both arms over her bosom. You're talking about Mom, aren't you? Go ahead. Keep talking. Not like I know anything about her anyway. Guilt rolled off Taeyong in waves. Naruto could almost taste it. What did Young's mother have to do with this? Admittedly, he didn't know enough about Young's family to rightly make any guesses there, but it didn't sound like a happy story all the same. Not with Young glaring bloody red daggers at her father. That was one landmine he very much intended to avoid. Geez, you can't choose your family. The older blonde rounded on him. Quiet. I wasn't talking to you. Maybe not, but I'm still going to kick your butt if you keep this up. Taeyong growled, the deep growl of an angry father. That's my line. Break my daughter's heart and I break you. Young absolutely sputtered. I am right here. Trust me, I won't be doing any breaking. Now get that weapon out of my face. And if I don't, try me. Bang. Naruto didn't even blink when Tai's shotgun barked. A harsh crack of sound filled the air, leaving his ears ringing. Empty shells fell harmlessly to the ground. In hindsight, Tai probably didn't mean anything by it. He was hardly a murderer, just an irritated parent who'd seen far too much for his liking and decided his best move was to scare him off. Moreover, he assumed he had aura-like and reasonably fit individual, and likewise, that a warning shot wouldn't do anything more than give him a bad case of tinnitus, something that would clear up within a few minutes. On that account, he was right. Now look what you did. He rubbed the side of his head. That hurt my ears. He did not, however, anticipate Young's reaction. Neither of them did. Dad, what the hell? You almost shot him. Taeyong flinched. Sweetie, I can explain, so can I. In a single fluid motion, Naruto stepped in, swept Taeyong's legs and drove an elbow into the back of his neck as he fell. Flawless victory. The Xiaolong patriarch dropped like a sack of potatoes to the street. Young tutted. Was that really necessary? Naruto pivoted to face her fully. He lived, didn't he? He did. Her head bobbed in a nod. Then she grimaced. And he's getting up again. He craned his neck, following her gaze. Clenched knuckles barreled into his nose. Chakra flashed. Something gave. Needless to say, it wasn't him. Taeyong recoiled, clutching now bloodied knuckles. What are you made of? Pure metal. Nope. He wiped a bit of the man's BLD from his face. Just chakra. All right, have it your own way. I tried to be nice. His fist shot up at speed. Clenched knuckles struck Taeyong in the chin. Young's father crumbled like a house of cards. Up he went, flipping arse over elbow. Down he came, landing squarely on his face. Aura sparked once, fizzled, then broke entirely. A muffled groan came stumbling blearily on its heels. Taeyong's Xiaolong went out like a light. This time, there would be no second wind. Young nudged him with a foot. Wasn't that a bit excessive? The blonde brow quirked. He's still breathing. I dunno, he was acting a bit crazy there by the end. Speaking of which, Young saw his expression and tapped her foot. You got somewhere to be. Not as such, he thumbed his chin, recalling something Roman had mentioned to him. Another less than well-adjusted individual. I just thought of something I forgot to do well. A grimace now. Something I ought to nip in the bud before it comes back to bite me. Feeling like leaving Vale for a bit. She grimaced. After that disaster just now. I dunno. I'll make more drinks for you. Deal. Roman wouldn't listen to her. Cinder had grown accustomed to Torchwick's surly attitude, come to accept that his indefatigable sass was simply part of his being and nothing short of complete and utter domination would change it. She'd thought that beaten out of him long ago during their first encounter. How arrogant they had been back then. How low she had brought them. Apparently, he'd forgotten her place. After her recent embarrassment, she had thought to corner the criminal mastermind in one of his many safe houses via an unexpected visit. Put pressure on him and that silent helper of his. Force him to move up their timeline. Instead, she'd received a smug smile and a request to kindly sod off at her earliest convenience. Where had this sudden confidence come from? This brash, onerous defiance? She had to know. Because he was still smiling at her. Enough. Cinder inhaled deeply, MSTR herself once more. You will answer to me. Roman remained sprawled on his sofa and actually dared to grin at her, the little churl. How dare he? Yeah, I don't think so, sweetheart. EFLC kid out a cigar and lit it at his leisure while his silent companion looked on. Sorry, there's been a chance in management actually. Wait. He snapped his fingers with a merry cackle besides. I'm not sorry at all. PSS off, would you kindly? Cinder felt her temper flare. She stomped down on it. You work for me? Nope. There it was. That blasted word again. I answered to a higher power now literally. And all that dust I stole. Mine now. A pause followed as he touched a finger to his chin. Well, maybe it's his, seeing as he had me move it. Meh, semantics. He laughed at her eyes widened. Point is, I don't take orders from you anymore. Capuch. Fire flashed in her hands. If you think for a single instant that I will let you walk away with that Roman wagged that same infernal finger at her, wholly at his ease. I wouldn't do that if I were you, Cindy. Our mutual friend would be awfully upset if something untoward were to happen to me. You see, he's gotten rather invested in my continued existence. Yours, not so much. His free palm rose, scroll in hand, revealing a DMN video within. You remember him, right? A certain blonde boy who kicked your smug little butt to kingdom come. Cinder stilled. Ah, you remember him, don't you? Roman took another long drag from his cigar and exhaled. Smoke hit her face. Cinder snarled. Roman saw her eye flash with fire and cackled anew. Whoa, that's our cue, Neo. Exit stage left. They vanished in a shattering of glass as Cinder's fist passed through empty air. Only an echo of laughter remained. She rounded on it, stalked to the nearest window and moved it open. No sign of them. The streets were empty. Curses. Panic bloomed in their absence. She needed that dust. Without it, no, without Roman and Neo, everything would come unraveled. Salem did not tolerate failure. She never had. She had already refused to aid her, promised retribution should she fail to bring Vale under their heel. If she continued to fail, she would be lessened in her sight, or worse, replan no. She shook her head. Don't think about that. Anything but that. Too late. The thought was in her head. Her heart rate spiked, and her chest heaved. Short, sharp breaths of pure panic escaped her lips. Calm. She must be calm. She had sworn never to lose control again. This wasn't the end of her schemes. Just calmly walk out of here and... Her heels crunched against something. A note. She recognized Roman's scrawl and it galled her to no end. By the by, he's off to visit your little animal friends. She looked lower still. Probably talking to all red and angsty right now. I'm sure you know what'll happen next. Regards, Roman. It was too much. The last tenuous fiber of Cinder's sanity snapped. Her eyes burst into wild, furious fire. Cinder fall threw her head back and screamed. She screamed and screamed and screamed. Roman's apartment burst into flames. Adam growled. What do you want, human? Laughter answered him, low and bemused. Human. The blonde before him blinked. Adam was it. He reclined almost lazily in the seat in his tent, regarding him and his soldiers as one might a horde of harmless puppies. Do I look human to you? The torches FLC curled around him as he spoke. I haven't been human for a very long time. For a moment, his disguise shifted. Adam saw something he didn't like. His BLD ran cold. What are you? On vacation? That's what I am. Just like that, his sunny smile returned. Now are you gonna put on your big boy breathe and talk to me, or do I have to kick your butt? Adam's hand strayed to Wilt. Oh, please. Pale eyes rolled in mild derision. Put the pointy stick away. I don't want to fight you. On the contrary, I want to help you. His companion bridled, but didn't speak. He stilled. Anger said he should strike. Common sense dictated otherwise. This man had infiltrated his camp with ease. He was skilled. Perhaps he should hear him out. He didn't much like the idea of the blonde standing behind him, but she'd held her tongue thus far, so he'd give her the same courtesy. For now, and what manner of help do you offer? Advice, for one. His voice was smooth as silk. You're going about this all wrong. What if I told you you could win everything you ever wanted, all without lifting a finger? He raised a hand and belatedly, Adam glimpsed the clawed fingers therein. No attack on Beacon, no stealing dust, no need for Cinder or her schemes, no nothing. A way to change public opinion of the White Fang forever. What would you say, then? Would you be willing to hear me out? Hira had preached similar. He'd been wrong. I would say I didn't believe you. Stubborn. The blonde man heaved a sigh. Take a swing at me, then. That'll be proof enough. His lilac-eyed companion grimaced at the last. Now wait just a second. You'll die. I didn't agree to any of. It was a good swing, Adam thought. Perfect. Poised. Flawless. Anyone would have been slain on the spot. Instead his precious wilt shattered against the stranger's forehead, drawing an outraged roar from him. And then, quite suddenly it wasn't shattered at all, because he found himself holding an intact blade once more. As though he'd never attacked him at all. Strength he could understand. Respect, even. But this. What manner of witchcraft and wizardry was this? Blue eyes flashed in the low light as the stranger tilted his head. Now will you listen to me? Wilt fell from his hand and clattered to the floor. What do you want? His unlikely ally merely smiled. I want to be your friend, Adam. He told him the plan. And what a plan it was.